Welcome to another edition of the Ultimate Weigh-In Show. I'm your host, Manpreet, aka MMA Lock of the Night, and your boy on Twitter at MMALOTN. This week, we got a big UFC 264 card headed our way. The trilogy fight between Conor McGregor and Dustin Poirier. Let's see who get their hand raised for the second time between these two guys. I'm really excited for the fight, not to mention the co-main event between Wonderboy Thompson and Gilbert Derino Burns. Great fights sprinkled out throughout the card, and I have great guests joining me as always, but this time we got a banger of a lineup for you guys to, match the banger of a card that we got coming up this weekend. So you guys know the drill. I'm going to bring these guys in one by one, and we will slowly start to break down these cards for you guys. First and foremost, I got to bring in my guy, Nick Kalikas. Nick, what's going on, my brother?
Not much, man. Appreciate you having us on here. Looking forward to this.
Absolutely. Shout out to Nick Kalikas that really brought this cast together for me, and I'm forever indebted to him. I will always thank him no matter what, no matter how much he gets annoyed with me. I'm gonna continuously rag on this guy to be like, hey, thanks for helping me out for UFC 264. But you guys know Nick Kalikas, obviously from MMA Oddsbreaker, UFC on the line on the Fight Pass as well. And another guest that we have is another person on UFC on the line. We got my guy, Yanni the Greek, first ever appearance on my stream, on my shows. Yanni, what's going on, buddy?
Never better, bro. Thanks for having me. I love being on, and I'm a fan of all you guys, and especially you putting out that MMA content. I love soaking it up because from all of you, I'm the least qualified as far as mixed martial arts go. I'm a trader. For me, it's a market. So I love being on, especially having a world-class fighter and odds maker, and you running this show. Don't get better than that. And for a card like this, perfect timing, brother.
Yeah, my viewers are more so used to seeing other guys that are normally on YouTube and watching these other predictor shows, but I'm so happy to have so many different minds here. We have the odds maker, we have the numbers guy, and we have a fighter as well I'm going to be introducing in a second here. So I'm very happy to have this cast put together. So without further ado, it took me a long time to forgive this guy for choking out my guy, Sam Stout in Winnipeg back in 2013. But after cashing a couple of tickets over Claudio Silva and Warley Alves, I finally forgave him. James Krause, what's going on, my brother?
What's up, man? Sorry about that, first of all. Welcome on the other ticket, second of all. So, I'm stoked to be here, man. This is an awesome lineup. It's cool. There's two people that I text just about every weekend to ask for their picks, and there are two other guys on this show. So it's pretty cool to have these guys. On.
You got to get James's football picks on here.
Okay,
you really got to do.
You're good on the gridiron.
You don't know.
Shit. Well, James, you can add me to that rotation in case you need some, help with some MMA picks as well too. I got you, brother. All right, let's start this thing off. I don't want to waste too much more time here. So the first and foremost, we got Yaozong Hu going up against Alan Amedovski. Both guys have been out of the cage for an extended period of time. 2 years for Amedovski, 3 years for Yaozong. Yaozong actually took a 10-month USADA suspension, but is obviously making his comeback now and probably fighting at the weight class that he should be at, right? He came into the UFC at heavyweight, then he went down to light heavyweight, and the guys were still a little bit too strong and big for him. Now he's fighting Amedovski at 185, and he looked decent on the scales today. He looked very sucked out, but still looked all there. I'm thinking that people that are investing in this fight are more so just banking on the potential of both guys here. With like Yaozong, he made his UFC debut. He was only 23 years old. Now he's 26, getting work over there at Tiger Muay Thai as well as the UFC Shanghai PI as well. So I'm excited to see what kind of improvements that he's made. And now he's coming in against Amedovski, who seems to be more of a headhunter. Wants to take your head off, throw your head into the third row, if you want to call it that. Has a decent game off of his back from the regional scene, but we didn't really see much of it when he went up against Krzysztof Jotko a couple years back. Now I'm excited to see what he brings to the table here against Yaozong. I'm actually going to be going with the potential side of things, the younger guy, 26-year-old Yaozong, who I think he's going to be able to put a bit of pace on Amedovski, take him down, grind him out, and win a decision. Most people think this fight's going to end inside the distance, but I think that we'll see a disciplined approach here from Yaozong, especially the first time at his proper weight class. So my pick is going to be Yaozong Hu here. Nick, I'll actually throw it on over to you now. How do you feel about this matchup, especially with both of them coming off of such extended layoffs?
Yeah, and they're both really flawed as well. So for me, it's hard to trust this fight as far as a betting perspective. I mean, both these guys, you could see the danger aspect. They both like to swing. They both have some skill for sure. But, I mean, defensively, they're just too much to question for me. So I'm staying far away from it. I understand why the money came in on the underdog. Everybody, it seems like Hugh is the popular bet. A lot of people are believing in what you're saying as well. I think the upside is better for Hugh. I mean, he's, had that hiatus or whatnot too. He's dropped a couple weight classes, and I think he has more upside at this point. But Amedovski is going to be coming into this fight swinging as well. So I'm going to be a little hesitant, honestly. So I'm not very confident either way in this fight. I'm leaning a little bit more towards Amedovski because of his competition level, but I wouldn't be surprised if Hugh gets it done.
Amedovski has been spending time over there at Extreme Couture, so it's going to be interesting to see how that has helped round out his game. Yanni, how do you see this fight going down? There isn't much numerical statistics and stuff to really go over with these guys, considering the lack of time they've truly had inside the cage. But what can you pry from this matchup, and ultimately, what side do you lean?
Both of you set it up perfectly for me. It's all that uncertainty that makes this fight pretty simple to bet. One guy came out as a minus 170 or so favored. To break even, he's got to win that fight close to 65% of the time. So to bet him, I got to say he wins over 70% of the time. With all that uncertainty, there's no way we could come to that conclusion together. Both these guys are on a 2-year layoff. Both these guys have 0 UFC wins, and one of them has never even fought at middleweight. He fought at heavyweight and light heavyweight. So there's no data to even back him up in that weight class. So it's pretty obvious that it was going to be a dog or leave it alone situation. I wasn't surprised to see sharp money coming in on the dog. And I think win or lose, that's the only position you could take on a fight like this. Unless you know something, or someone like James who could look at the X's and O's and maybe quantify that one fighter has such an advantage over the other that it's worth laying the chalk. Otherwise, that uncertainty makes it an easy fight to either bet or leave alone.
Yeah, James, I respect all the fighters 100%, but I got to imagine that if you were in the corner of Alan Amedovski in his last fight against John Phillips, going in there and just fighting the fight that he wants, 14 seconds, trades leather with the only way that John Phillips could possibly win that fight, and then he ends up getting knocked out. You got to be pulling out your hair as a coach to see your fighter go in there and just play right into your opponent's game plan. How much do you know about these fighters, and ultimately which side do you end up leaning on?
Full disclaimer, I don't know a ton about these guys, and that's actually really rare. I mean, I'm a student of the game as well, so it's pretty rare that I don't know a ton about either guy. But I mean, I know enough to make an opinion on this. And my opinion from a betting perspective is I don't like to agree with these guys very often, but man, they hit it right on the head. To me, they're using the word uncertainty. Whenever I bet on a fighter, and I think both these guys know this, I like to look for consistency. Right, like whenever I'm betting on somebody, I like to look for consistency. So has this person proven time and time again that? And when I look for consistency, I look for consistency in making good decisions. Right, so it's like, does this person make good decisions? Is their fight IQ high? Do they have a good chin? Or is their cardio always good? Like, these are the things that I kind of like check naturally. And for me, neither one of these guys, I can't check hardly any of those boxes on any of those guys. So it's for me, it's out of. I'm just staying completely away from it. If you're betting on this fight, it's probably just because you want to bet, you know what I mean? Like, or if you know something like on the inside that, you know what I mean? Like and I'm guilty of it sometimes. Hey, I just want to play, man. Just leave me alone, So, but to me, it's dog or pass.
I got a Who ticket in my pocket. I can't lie.
Consistency in this fight,
Yeah, no, I completely understand, James.
It's dog or pass for me on this. I'm out.
Yeah, no, I get it, but for some reason with MMA Twitter and MMA gambling Twitter, they like to sync on one of these fights where it's just like, we can all pass. We don't need to stick in our flag here on either guy when we don't have much information on either guy. But for some reason, that's what these guys like to do, and I don't mind it if they see value in the underdog, which is the case I'm seeing more of. I'm completely okay with that. All right, let's move on to the next fight here. We got Zhalgas Zhumagulov going up against Jerome Rivera. Both guys have had a pretty tough time inside the UFC, both winless, 0-3 for Jerome Rivera and 0-2 for Zhalgas Zhumagulov. In terms of odds, Zhumagulov is the second biggest favorite on the card, -295, and there has been some action coming in on Jerome Rivera, but he sits roughly around +265. Nick, I'll actually let you kick off this breakdown. Who do you like in this matchup between two guys that seem to go to a decision more often than not? How do you like this fight?
Yeah, it's another tricky one because I think Rivera is one of these guys that when he shows up, man, I mean, he could definitely bring it. Offensively, he's so talented, especially on the ground. But Zhumagulov is a little bit more steady. I think he's a little bit more consistent. It did open market wide around -400, and the line is dropping right now over at Circa. We have this fight at -305, and I think it opened market wide around -400 or so. So it's dog or pass situation to most people. I actually like the favorite here. I wouldn't bet it, though. It's still at minus 300, to be honest with you. It's another pass situation for me. Because I do think Zhumagulov, like I said, he's just a little bit more consistent. I think he's a little bit more durable. I think he puts everything together a little bit better. But Rivera, again, he's got that danger aspect. And I think he's just been a little bit underrated because of his performances not being so steady or consistent, I should say.
For sure, Yanni, I feel like you're salivating at the mouth to take this big plus money on Jerome Rivera, considering how these guys match up. How do you see this fight going down?
I think if you bet it, you should have bet it early and probably have bet the dog. This is one of those fights where someone's going to cash a ticket, most likely, and think they placed a good bet, even though they didn't. Like, there's nothing to justify being opening a minus 400 in this spot. Zhumagulov lost both his fights, and he was favored in both of them. It's not as if he was an underdog. His opponent, sure, he's 0-3. He closed the dog in all three of those. No, the market expected him to lose. So he didn't surprise anyone by going out there and losing. Going to have, 6+ years younger? That's a nice edge. Height, reach advantage on his side. South Pole, all those, there's statistical significance to lean towards that dog to back that up. Now, stylistically, I don't know enough about these guys to say, does he have any kind of advantage and path to victory? But price alone keeps me off the favorite because he hasn't performed as a small favorite. And now you want me to back him as chalk? It doesn't make sense. So I haven't bet it, but it seems like, again, not like a broken record, but dog or pass. I just have no confidence in betting the favor. You could bet chalk, like some guys could bet chalk. And if James tells me like someone that's chalky, I'll bet it with confidence because I know you have little room for error when you bet chalk, but you have to have strong support. And if he likes something, then he saw something and there's strong support there enough to overcome even that hold. I'm okay with that, but I'm not going to lay minus 400 unless I'm very confident, even 300. And I just don't see it.
Yeah, James, I'd love to get your perspective on this coming from a coach's perspective, even a fighter's perspective, actually. Both guys haven't found a win inside the UFC yet. 0-3, like I said, for Jerome Rivera, 0-2 for Zhumagulov. You got to believe that it might impact how they actually fight, right? Like, they just want to go out there and get a win at the end of the day. How do you see this fight going down ultimately?
Well, somebody has to win, right? So that's what's great about this is somebody's got to win. So to me, Zhumagulov is just stylistically, he's a tough matchup for Jerome Rivera. One of the things at the high level, and this is where like I think that my brain works a little different than these guys, is I look at like stylistically how they match up, and I know these guys look at more the number side, and I completely agree with them. Like, there's no way that I could lay this much chalk on Zhumagulov. I wouldn't do it. Now, if you want, once again, if we're playing just to play, I think I have him in like one small parlay. You know what I mean? Just to play. I do think Zhumagulov is a tough matchup for Rivera. Rivera's wrestling isn't great offensively or defensively. I think he's a little defensively flawed in his striking. Zhumagulov likes to pressure fighters with volume. He's a good puncher. He's durable. I just think stylistically he's a tough matchup. But if we're straight betting this, there's no way I'm laying that money on Zhumagulov. If you want to bet it, just to bet it. For me, you got to get some value out of it, and that's going to come from like a parlay or the over, which I'm sure is just as chalky as is the straight bet. So, dog or pass if you're going to straight bet it, or if you want to get some value, small something on Zhumagulov, which I did, but it's not like, it's not like I feel, it's basically one of those things like I bet like the 3 biggest favorites on the card. You know what I mean? Like it's a cheater bet or something like that. So it's nothing. I'm just playing to play at that point. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so the over 2.5 is actually minus 215, so there is a little bit of chalk there, but I do believe that this fight is going to go the full 15 minutes. However, just like everybody
100%.
said, I find it difficult to believe that Zhumagulov will truly cover that minus 300, minus 400 line with his fighting style. He's very point fighting type of oriented. He likes to go out there and just put volume and maybe make a couple takedowns here and there. I feel like Rivera could go out there and almost match his volume, but defensively speaking, from a striking standpoint, he's not the greatest, so he's going to definitely be eating some shots from Zhumagulov in this fight, and that damage might ultimately play into the judges. But I have to take a stab on this. Jerome Rivera by decision at plus 550. I got to take a little bit of a sprinkle on there, given I do believe this fight goes to the decision. And if they are going to match each other output wise, I like my chances with that plus 550 ticket for him to potentially cash it. But I think Zhumagulov ultimately wins this fight, but I think that there could be some small value here on Jerome Rivera. All right, let's move on to the next fight here. Very interested to hear everybody's thoughts on this. We got Omari Akhmedov, against Brad Tavares. In terms of odds, we got minus 155-ish for Brad Tavares, plus 140-ish for Omari Akhmedov. Classic striker versus grappler matchup. Yanni, I'm going to kick it over to you to help us start this breakdown. Who do you like in this matchup between the wrestler and the striker?
Yeah, I thought Tavares should have been a bigger favorite, but then when I dug a little deeper and I saw that Omari's has won a couple coin flip fights, I see that there's some momentum there, and I understand why the market priced it a little shorter. Because as far as looking just at the data, like if you weigh it, especially for strength of schedule, Tavares has a lot of advantages. If he's able to neutralize the wrestling, which it appears he can, based on the opponents he's faced so far, I think he'll be able to neutralize Akhmedov's wrestling, then he's going to have a significant striking advantage. At least that's what he's had in the past. Now, the only negative is that we've only seen him come back and have that one fight since that layoff. So how much can you weigh the sample size of late? It's one fight. But again, I'm going further back, and that's where that strength of schedule, I think, gives Tavares, where I saw he should have been an even bigger favorite. I think that's the right side. I saw him come down in some places, then go back up. I'd like to find out from Nick where the public money's on and if there's any sharp money on this fight. But this is a favorite that I don't think the price is high enough.
Nick, do you happen to have that right off the bat?
Yeah, I mean, early on, it was actually Tavares getting the sharper action at Circa, but now we're starting to see some sharp buyback come in on Akhmedov as well. So it's one of those intriguing fights and intriguing spots where we are going to see two-way sharp action. I mean, there's several fights on this card that two-way sharp action is going to come in. Once a line hits a certain point, we get some resistance and it comes back down or whatnot as well. So this is an awesome fight. I'm looking forward to this.
All right, we'll get right back to you in terms of getting your actual breakdown on this fight. For James, though, in the layman's eye, we just see it as a striker versus grappler matchup. I'm interested to see how much you know about both of these guys and how they match up, and ultimately who comes out with their hand raised.
I'm kind of torn on this. Like, I really am, because there's one factor. Like, when this fight was initially announced, I was like, man, I kind of like Akhmedov in this fight, to be honest with you guys. But then I started, like Yanni said, I started digging a little bit more, and Tavares is this really, really difficult to take down. The thing that kind of scares me with this, and I'll probably do a smaller play on Tavares, but the thing that scares me about this is two things. Well, it's one thing on both sides. Is Akhmedov, he pushes a good pace, and he's gonna shoot, he's gonna test your takedown defense. He puts decent volume out for a middleweight, and sometimes I feel like Tavares will let rounds slip away, but his volume is lower. Like, he's not putting out a ton of output. So the thing that worries me is, like, Akhmedov could just outwork him at times, you know. That kind of scares me a little bit on this, but I do think Tavares is gonna win. I think Yanni hit it right on the head. If he stops the takedown, he is the cleaner striker. But I have seen Tavares in the past that seem to kind of let rounds slip away just from inactivity, you know, and that kind of scares me a little bit, to where I wouldn't want to put like my full bet amount that I normally would. So I'll probably do like a half play or something, a half unit, if whatever you guys call it. I'll probably do like a half play on that. I like Tavares in it, but I hate how he just lets fights. He'll let rounds slip away or make them closer than they need to be at times. And with a guy like Akhmedov that likes to push the pace, that kind of scares me a little bit.
Yeah, I think we're going to have to be banking more so on the damage that Tavares is able to accumulate, rather than, you know, having these big moments. Akhmedov, you know, with his striking style, it seems like he's more like that classic wrestler striker, right? Just wide looping shots, trying to close the distance so they can eventually get on your legs, get a double, a single, whatever it is, push you up against the cage. And Akhmedov does that so well. There's so many fighters that have a ton of trouble. The one fight that really opened my eyes to him was when he fought Ian Heinisch. I was very surprised that he was able to put that type of pace, pressure, and have that much success against a guy like Ian Heinisch. But we saw in Akhmedov's last fight, he was able to go out there and submit Tom Breeze, but I think that's more so of a Tom Breeze issue than a Omari Akhmedov being that good, right? Akhmedov, again, wrestler, good top pressure. There's been so many times in the past where I try to pursue that round 3 prop against him, thinking that guys are going to be able to finish him. And I know people are very happy to take that shot again. I think it's roughly around plus 1,200 or plus 1,500 for Tavares to finish Akhmedov in round 3. But Tavares not notoriously a finisher either, so I think it's going to be difficult for him to get that finish. But I think we'll see Akhmedov land takedowns early here, but I think it's going to start to taper off as the fight goes on, and hopefully we get this kind of rejuvenated Brad Tavares, second fight after having such a long layoff now. Hopefully he's able to kind of replicate his performance against Antonio Carlos Jr., put together some good damage, hopefully, downplay the control time a little bit more, and then just keep this fight on the feet and just outstrike Akhmedov over 15 minutes. So I'm going Tavares decision. Nick, we'll wrap this matchup with you. How are you feeling about this fight?
I mean, all three of you, I think, hit the nail on the head here with it. I think Tavares is the better striker. I think he has great takedown defense in most cases, right? He has been taken down, but, I mean, more times than not, he's stuffing the takedowns, he's keeping the fight upright, and he's outstriking his opponents. And I think he can do that here. What you said, you touched on, I think Akhmedov's wrestling is going to come into play. He's going to look for these takedowns. He probably will have some success early on. It'll be a struggle. It's not going to be easy. But I think as the fight progresses a little bit, he will wear down, and round 3 is going to probably be Tavares. But my concern here is, honestly, a lot of people aren't talking about it. Akhmedov does throw some bombs, right? And Tavares has been clipped, and he's been hurt in the past, and he's been knocked out, right? I mean, he's been in there with some great strikers, and he's been okay. So I'm not saying he's going to go out here and get knocked out, but that is a slight concern that I have in the back of my mind, that maybe Akhmedov gets a little wild, gets a little sloppy, and clips him with a big bomb or something like that. But I think it's going to be competitive, but I do think Tavares is probably the side here.
I like it. Seems like we have a unanimous play here on Brad Tavares, and that always makes me feel a little bit comfortable, especially when I have Brad Tavares on a couple of tickets of my own. All right, let's move on to the next fight here. And clockwise, we would normally go with James kicking this one off next, but I'm actually going to get him to kick the next one off for us. So I'll kick this one off for us. We got Jennifer Maia going up against Jessica Ai. In terms of odds, we're looking at minus 180-ish for Jennifer Maia, plus 160 for Jessica Ai. And I like the value that we're getting here on Jessica Ai, as I do think that this fight is going to play out very close. I feel like there's a huge amount of recency bias on the Jennifer Maia line, strictly due to her stealing one round off of Valentina Shevchenko in the last fight. And that was off of a Valentina kind of gaff, right? Like, she goes for a takedown, she gets reversed, Jennifer Maia ends up on top, and she rides out that second round. And then, we even see the live odds go from like minus 1,400 for Shevchenko going into that second round, drop down to minus 300-ish, and then go back up to minus 2,000 going into round 3 and round 4, going into round 4, because she's able to reestablish her dominance. Jennifer Maia, not notoriously a fighter that goes out there and seeks the grappling. She's only 2 of 4 on her takedowns in her 6 UFC fights. She's more so trying to show off her shoot the box striking style, right? She goes out there, tries to throw combinations, leg kicks. She's really good in that aspect. But Jessica Ai is pretty good in that aspect too. Like, I think she has serviceable enough striking to keep fights competitive. And I've been saying this all week. I feel like the flyweight division is like, we got Valentina Shevchenko up here, and then just a little bit of a drop off, and then we have these group of women like the Lauren Murphys, the Joanne Calderwoods, the Andrea Lees, the Jennifer Maias, the Jessica Ai's. Like, they're all in that where they should, whenever they're matched up, more often than not, they should be pick 'em odds. And now we're getting plus 160 is plus 165 on Jessica Ai in a fight that I feel like once it goes to the judges, which I absolutely think it's going to, flip a coin. Whoever wins, I'd rather be on that plus 165 than that minus 180-ish on Jennifer Maia here. So my play is Jessica Ai. That's a girl that I normally go out there and look to fade. I was successful in fading her with Cynthia Calvillo, but this time around, I got my money on her this time. I'm going to trust her as a dog, and I think she takes maybe a split decision, but it's definitely going to be a decision that I got Jessica Ai winning this fight. Nick, how do you see this fight going down?
Well, this one, my man, is going to be interesting because I know for a fact that we're going to have 2 split opinions with Yanni and with Krause here. It's going to be funny. So these guys are going to have some fire. For me, I'm more neutral here. I agree with what you said, though. I do think that if you're going to bet this fight, I'm going to lean a little bit more towards Jessica Ai because I'm expecting it to hit the scorecards. And judges, as we know, man, I mean, these guys don't know what to look for half the time. They get the scorecards wrong. Often fights are, especially in female fights, they're so competitive. And like you said, I agree with you completely. After Shevchenko, all these girls are kind of grouped in together. And it's going to be a 29-28 split decision type of fight regardless. So I don't think you could really lay the chalk. But I do like what I see from Maia. I think she's getting better. I honestly think that Maia, to play devil's advocate here, is like improving fight by fight. Since she's entered the UFC, I think her takedown defense has gotten better. I think her striking, her confidence, everything. I mean, let's face it, even though she only won that basically a round against Shevchenko or so, she still had more success than most of these ladies out there. So I do think that recency bias has taken her price to another level right now. It's a little bit too high, but this should be a competitive fight, and I think she should be a very, very slight favorite. I just think it's a dog or pass situation. Now let these guys fight it away here.
I like it. The reason I actually haven't checked out any of your content this week is just so to leave a little bit of a surprise factor for myself for once I actually get you guys on this show. So Yanni, how are you feeling about this matchup between Jennifer Maia and Jessica Ai?
I'm so glad. I hope James disagrees, and hopefully he could talk me off of something. And here's why. For me, I keep it very simple. Like, since learning how to be a winning sports bettor, I found my edge and I stick to it. And for me, I follow the charts. And that's it. And so it's not about being able to watch the fight and quantify the differences in the styles. I can't do that. And what convinced me that I was correct was when I got the privilege to work for the UFC, and I met someone like James, met some world champions, former world champions, current world champions, even just regular pro fighters there, and listening to them talk about fighting, I realized, dude, we're all morons. Like, they must listen to us and be like, oh my God, like, seriously. And it would be like Aikman having me talk about NFL. What, are you kidding me? So that's why I stick to what I know, the markets, the betting side. And the betting side, to me, this one is another obvious one. And again, the one thing I learned is trade the charts that make sense. Don't try to make sense out of every chart. And it's the same with fighting. Bet the fights that make sense. Don't try to make sense out of every fight. And for this, here's what makes sense to me. We have common opponents here. This is what the market told us. Jennifer Maia, forget the Shevchenko fight. Both of them lost to Shevchenko. Shevchenko is going to be a -1,000 favorite against anybody. We all know that. But we have Chukasian, and who else do we have? Calderwood. Okay. They both split 1-1 worth each of them. Forget the result because there's a lot of randomness to any one outcome. But look at the prices. Jessica Ai was a favorite against both of those. One time a -250, another time a -150, 175. She was favored twice. Maia was a dog to both of those fighters. Both of them, she was an underdog. The market concluded she should lose those fights. They split, whatever. Now, coming off that Shevchenko loss, her stock actually went up. That's a fighter I'm not going to get value in. When you lose and your stock goes up, that next fight, I'm not backing you. Win or lose, that's not a value bet more times than not. Because the odds maker, the bookmaker, that guy in the top right, he's going to shade towards that bias that she looked so good. They're going to take that plus money or whatever. We got to shade it and make sure they take the worst of it. So I got to sit back and either be contrarian or leave it alone. And in this case, I actually think, there's value there at plus money because of that. And the fact this is highly favored to go to the judges, like Nick said. And if the judges get involved, you're going to be holding your breath in females MMA, unless it's so one-sided. That's my argument. Now, if James has the fighting argument, like, dude, you're nuts because she's going to do X, Y, and Z, then I'm minimizing my position because I respect his opinion. He knows that. But if I listened to someone else told me that, I'd be like, yeah, okay. Like, I see value and I'm sticking with it.
I like it. I can't wait to hear what James has to say about this matchup, considering how Gianni just teed it up from James. How do you feel about this matchup?
This is actually one of my better plays. I like Maia, and I'm going to tell you why. So first off, we talked about Shevchenko, right? So you're saying, oh, she's overvalued now because she won a round against Shevchenko. Well, name the last flyweight that won a round against her. I'll wait.
It's going to be a while. It's going to be a while.
It's going to be a while. Nobody's even came close. It's not even close. So the fact that she showed, like, hey, I can compete. I can compete at this top level, because we already all agreed that it's Shevchenko, and then everybody's down here. And then when I hear everybody's down here, Calderwood's name was all on that list, but Maia dominated Calderwood. What are we talking? Like, Maia, pitched a shutout against Calderwood. When she got her down on the ground, it wasn't even close. It wasn't even close. Dominated. And I think if this fight hits the ground, she's gonna cut through Ai like butter. I don't know if she's gonna finish. I don't think she'll finish. But for me, if we're talking about MMA, the odds of this fight hitting the ground are high to me. And I think if this fight hits the ground, I think it's going to be Maia one-way traffic. I don't think it's going to be even close. I've consistently seen improvement out of Maia. I think she can strike with Ai. And I think she will get her down at some point. I don't think it's going to look pretty. I don't think it's going to be a clean double leg, but I think I will find herself on the ground at some point, and I don't think that matchup is going to be close on the ground. So for me, I'm going off of Maia's consistent improvement fight after fight. We talked about, and this is MMA math, so the common opponent, I don't take this into factor, but it is a factor that they have Calderwood, and that fight was extremely competitive with Eye and Calderwood. To me, it wasn't with Maia and Calderwood. Maia looked great in that fight. So I'm going past Shevchenko. And then she looked good against Shevchenko in the first round, and then she got dominated like everybody else does. But she won a round. I mean, and I know there's recency bias. Okay, so let's go back. I thought she looked good against Calderwood too. She you know what? And I faded her in that fight. Maybe that's why I'm pissed off about it. But I faded her in that fight, and she's looked good to me lately. And I think she's gonna win this fight pretty convincingly, to be honest with you guys.
He saved me some money. James saved me some money, bro. Seriously.
Well, you could have told me before, James. Jesus, I'm already invested on Jessica.
No, I mean, don't change your position.
No, I'm not. But I'm willing to limit it because it makes sense. Listen, bro, for me, when common opponents make zero is as far as MMA math, it doesn't make sense. For you, it does. You're a coach. It better make sense to you. You've seen the tape. You're able to understand it. For me, it doesn't. That's what I'm getting at. So, yeah, win or lose, you're saving me money is what I'm saying. The outcome doesn't matter anymore. The fact that you saw that is reason enough for me to lower my position, regardless of how it turns out, because I didn't know that.
Well,
so,
I see where all you guys are coming from. I do see that. And I mean, when we talk about, like, there's value and then there's who I think is going to win. You guys bet on value. I bet on who I think is going to win the fight. And I do take value. Like, you guys put value
ahead of it. Yeah, I get it, bro.
Yes, I'm the other way.
You're putting the outcome where you're how it's going to turn out. Yeah, I get it. It makes perfect sense because that's how you should approach it. You're a world-class fighter, not just a fighter, but a world-class fighter and coach whose job is to watch tape and analyze tape.
I think stylistically, Maia is a really tough matchup for Eye. I feel pretty adamant about that. I think this fight will hit the ground. I think Maia's going to control the ground game, and I think it'll be pretty close standing. So, you guys aren't wrong about anything that you said. I don't disagree with any of it. I just think Maia's gonna find a way to get it to the floor, and I feel pretty confident that her improvement, all that stuff, will lead to a decisive win.
See, sorry, not to go long, but that if you could combine that too, and when you find both, when you find the James's X's and O's and the market making sense, that's when you take those positions. Rest assured, that's where you'll make the most money. Like, if you could just be selective and sit back and wait for when the X's and O's line up with the market, meaning, just the market side gives you value too with certainty, you're golden, man. But it's almost impossible to have
one
both,
of the things that
to be a winning bettor, it's going to take you 2 decades, and to be a professional fighter at his level is going to take you 2 or 3 decades. You can't do both. That's what's difficult about it. So it's one or the other. It's hard to have both advantages.
All right, James, you can wrap this matchup up first.
Picks a lot. I get your guys' picks a lot, and then I'll see, like, hey, Nick says he likes Maia. Yanni says he likes Maia. I like Maia. We got a fire on that.
That's what I do.
That's what I do. Three. That's
what I do.
That's we fire. So,
confirmed.
Yeah. All right. Let's keep this train moving along. Actually, this is the fight that I wanted James to kick off on because he has a win over one of these guys. We got Trevin Giles going up against Dricus du Plessis. James, I want to kick this off you to begin with. When you got that call to take the Trevin Giles fight, how much time did you actually put into looking into Giles and how you were possibly going to approach that fight?
I already knew Giles. My teammate Zach Cummings fought him, so I had already studied him. I knew him really well. Like I didn't put any time into it because I had already put the time in.
Perfect. Okay. I think we're all in agreement here that James definitely won that fight. Rounds 1 and 3 easily on James Krause's side here. But in terms of how he matches up against Dricus du Plessis in this fight, it's been pretty much a pick 'em in terms of odds all week. We are getting a little bit more money on Dricus du Plessis, it seems like. But James, I'll actually let you kick this one off. I'm hoping a good amount about du Plessis and how these guys will actually match up with each other. How do you think this fight plays out?
Man, anytime that you have a newcomer that comes in like this, once again, we're talking about consistency, right? And you could say whatever you want about Giles. I do think Giles has been gifted his last 2 fights. I thought he lost. I thought I beat him, and I thought Roman Dolitz beat him. But Dolitz is good. Dolitz is really good. So I just look for consistency. And anytime you see a newcomer come in like that, his quality of opponent isn't great. Giles has fought some really good guys. He's beaten some good guys. And the guys he's lost to are pretty solid as well. So if we're talking about a coin flip fight, I want to lean towards the guy that's proven in the past that he can compete at that level. He's not going to get shook underneath the lights. He can deal with the power. And I'll tell you what, Giles has, his hand speed at middleweight is incredible. Like, his hand speed is fast. He covers distance very fast at middleweight. The Plessis, I can't put money on him. I know he's good. I know he's fought in some high level organizations. Brave, EFC, I think is the other one in Africa. And he's I think he's got all KSW. Yep, he's got all finishes. I believe he's definitely good. But for me, it's different. You know what I mean? Like, the KSW is KSW is bigger than UFC on some events. You know what I mean? It's a big deal. But at the UFC, in terms of level of technique and level of fighter, there's no better in the world of that. And I'm kind of indifferent on this fight, but if you're putting a gun to my head and making me pick one, I'm going to go Giles.
I like it. Yeah, I'm going to be on the Giles side here too, not with much confidence. I do think James touched on it. Like, his jab is probably one of the best in the UFC when he's on. The guy is so quick with it. He's able to get it off from different positions and different angles. And I think it kind of catches his opponents off guard. The only issue that I have with both fighters here is sometimes they lack on the output, and that gives me a little bit of a pause betting on either guy here. And more often than not, like you said, Dricus du Plessis, all of his fights haven't even gone to a judges' scorecards, whereas Giles has gone to a couple judges' scorecards. And I feel like if he just sticks behind his jab and just kind of not really pushes the pace, but kind of controls the pace, he should be able to kind of keep Dricus du Plessis kind of scratching his head for the majority of the fight. Du Plessis, it seems like his attack comes from more so just power combinations every now and then. He bursts every now and then, and he either knocks out his opponents, takes his opponents down. He has 9 submission victories out of 15 total fights, so that's definitely a path to victory for him. But Giles is no slouch on the ground either. James fucking had his back for the entirety of that first round and still lost that round somehow. I don't know how, but he knows what he's doing on the ground, so I think he'll definitely be fine there. With that said, I do think that Giles will be comfortable no matter where this fight goes. The only thing I can never get a solid read on is what his cardio is like. There's sometimes where you see him slow down and get choked out in the third round against guys like Joel Mearshart and Krause's pupil, Zach Cummings. And then there's other times you see him actually get a knockout like Bevan Lewis in the third round, or actually have a strong round in the third round. So I'm still trying to figure out what his cardio is. He seems to be Jekyll and Hyde when it comes to that type of style. But I do think he'll be able to control this fight. I do think he'll jab the face off of du Plessis here, and I think he'll take home a decision victory, which seems to be not the most popular opinion. A lot of people think this fight ends inside the distance. I think that Roberto Soldic and Gareth McLennan from 2014 were really hard hitters and really good strikers, but I think that Giles is going to be a little bit more disciplined, and I think he'll probably take this fight into at least the 15th minute and get that judges' scorecards, and I'm going to say that he wins this fight via decision. Nick, how do you feel that size this matchup up between a fight that's pretty much been a pick'em all week with a little bit of love coming in on du Plessis now?
I like what you guys said, and the popular opinion out there, or the popular pick, or the popular guy to bet here would be du Plessis, right? I think that's what everybody kind of feels. He's the hyped fighter coming into the UFC. He got a finish. I think a lot of people are expecting good things from him, but I think it is Giles' fight to win or lose. You're absolutely right. I don't trust du Plessis as much as the hype that he's getting right now out there. But the public betting money and some sharp action is coming in on du Plessis. We've seen some belief in him, and that's why the line has flipped to him being a slight favorite at most places, right, or a pick'em type of fight, because Giles did open market-wide the favorite here. So I think the opener was more correct, to be honest with you, than it is now. But I do think I don't trust Giles, I guess, as much as you guys do. He has been winning fights and then, get caught in a sub. I understand in some situations against James, his submission defense was okay in certain aspects of it, but I still think he's the type of fighter that's prone to kind of make a mistake here and there, and that cost him a fight before. So he's got 2 losses, specifically by submission in that route, and du Plessis is a pretty good guy on the ground. He's going to look to try to take this fight to the ground if he's not throwing bombs, like you said. So I think that's the danger aspect, is maybe if he does get this fight to the ground, if he gets his back, or if he gets a choke around his neck or something like that, Giles can blow it. But I think Giles is going to be winning this fight until he blows it, so to speak. If he doesn't blow it, he's going to win on the scorecards, or possibly even knock du Plessis out. Look, du Plessis is hittable, man, and he's been hurt. I believe he's gotten knocked out before as well. So I mean, it's not out of the question that Giles doesn't, spark him with a quick punch or two, combination or something like that along the way. But I do think it's Giles or Pass in this spot.
I like it. Yanni, let's bring this matchup on home, brother. How do you feel about these guys?
I agree with both those guys, especially Plessis appears to have the power, and a lot of KSW guys, especially when they have success there, tend to be a little bit overvalued in the UFC if they haven't had a lot of fights under their belt yet. I think that's what we're seeing here, but with Nick saying there's some sharp money, I thought it was more public money it was going to be on the Duplessis side because of how impressive, with the knockout power. But I agree with both of them. I think it's a Giles or Pass. I don't really have much on the fight. I don't have a strong opinion either way, but I will say this, some actionable info. I've seen some books serving up minus 115 on both sides. If you're dealing with a book like that, run. Like that hold is so high. Like the break even is 54 on both sides. So that comes to 108. You're paying an 8% hold. That's almost 20x what it is on a plain blackjack. Like be cautious with sports betting becoming more and more mainstream and sports books popping up everywhere. They're serving up some shady lines out there. And I saw some, because guys will put screenshot tickets and send them to me or shots and stuff. And some minus 115s both ways, guys betting into. Be careful, man. Be selective in the books you bet into. Lowering that hold alone is going to increase your ROI more than you could ever imagine. Putting more time into getting that lowered will benefit you more than putting time into studying and doing research. So, again, I don't have much on the fight, but there's some actionable information. If you got minus 115 on both sides, run from that book.
All right, I see Nick over there snickering while Yanni's dropping that knowledge on us. Nick, you got anything to say about that?
No, 100% right. And you know how many people don't even have a clue what Yanni just said? Bettors out there. So if you are new to the sports betting scene or to the sports betting world, pay attention to what Yanni just said. It means so much. I mean, at Circa, we are dealing minus 115, right? But on one side. The other side.
Yeah.
Right? So we're dealing a 20-cent line. That's what it's called in comparison to a 30-cent line.
Which is only a 4.5% hold. I could live with that, man. That's fair.
Yeah. So,
James, you keep it up over there?
Right? There's a lot of places that offer 20-cent line. It's not just
Yeah.
I love
I get it. I'm with it. I do understand what they're saying.
Dude, James is sharp. James is sharp. And he's got that trader mentality. That's why,
for sure.
Some great analysts make the worst sports bettors, and some pro athletes make some of the worst sports bettors because you're great at your sport, but it's a market. It's completely different. But he has an investor's, trader's mindset. And that's why he's able to do what he does with the sport, talk about the sports betting side like he does. Not stroking you, but that's the truth.
No,
Not
absolutely.
everyone, not all
totally
fighters do.
There's not a lot of fighters that actually bring on this type of show and give me solid analysis.
Exactly, the betting side of it. Exactly.
So I'm glad that James was more than happy to come on. All right, let's move on to the next fight here. A very intriguing fight between Ryan Hall and Ilia Topuria. We got, in terms of the line, it seems like it's coming down now, but Topuria roughly around minus 250 at certain spots, plus 195 on Ryan Hall. And Nick, I'll actually let you kick this one off, brother. How do you feel this matchup goes on between the heavily unorthodox Ryan Hall and this young hot prospect in Ilia Topuria?
I love what I've seen from Topuria thus far. I mean, the guy is definitely talented. He's got good wrestling. He's got good power on the feet. He mixes everything up well. He's the better fighter. I think he's the more complete fighter in this situation, and he should be a favorite. But the line's kind of creeping up there. You got to be careful, man, because even though Ryan Hall is a specialist, as you said, I mean, the jiu-jitsu game's off the charts. He has unorthodox ways of getting the fight to the floor. So it's not just his wrestling that sometimes it won't get it done, but he's got those rolls. You know what I'm talking about that has watched Ryan Hall fight. So he's got different methods
for days.
Right. Yeah. And then on top of it, his striking is so unorthodox as well, right? I mean, it's sometimes, I think a lot of people don't understand. James could probably explain this or probably agree in some ways to what I'm about to say. But if you're fighting an awkward fighter, it makes you kind of fight different and it makes you fight worse. Like you've kind of almost fight to that level. So it's hard to kind of be as smooth and as technical as you like to be sometimes against an awkward type of fighter. And that's what Ryan Hall brings even on the feet. But I think this is Topuria's fight to win or lose, to be honest with you. If he fights a very smart game plan, I think he is going to be the better striker. I think he should be able to keep the fight where he wants to keep it, and I think he should be safe enough to win this fight. But, I mean, I'm not going to personally lay 250-ish or whatever's out there right now. At Circa, we currently have, I believe it is minus 220 right now, plus 190, and the line actually dropped. It was a little bit higher, so there is money coming in on Hall. But early on, it was coming in on Ryan, or the other way on Topuria as well, right? So it got bet up a little bit. Now we're starting to see some action back. So this is a tricky one, man. I would not lay more than 2-1 on Topuria because of the respect I have for Hall and how he can get it done, even if he is kind of known for more of being kind of a one-trick pony or whatnot.
I absolutely agree with you that like a very unorthodox fighter like Hall will probably bring a weird type of game plan from Topuria, especially after he gets his feet wet inside the cage. The first couple minutes, he's like, okay, this is what I'm dealing with. Let me see how I can attack it and actually be effective with it. Yanni, how do you feel between this fight between Ryan Hall and Ilia Topuria?
Yeah, and even in today's world, you could be a specialist and have a ton of success if the opposition can't stop you. And for me in sports, I think there's nothing more impressive than that. When you know what they're going to do and they still can't stop it, to me, that's awesome. That's why I'm for open scoring. I know a lot of people are against it because they say, you know, the third round will be boring if one fighter's ahead. To me, that's your job, dude. You should know the score. In every sport, we know the score. If I'm up 2 touchdowns with 3 minutes left, I don't have to throw the ball. I'm going to run it down your throat. It's your job to strip it, use your timeouts correctly, and get the ball back in the score. It's not my job to give you an opportunity to beat me. That, to me, makes absolutely no sense, that argument. If a fighter's ahead, he should coast to a win. That's what you're there for. So to me, that makes no sense. Specialists, again, I'm all for it. But here, they're going to force me to get involved if this line keeps going down. Because I'm sorry, but the most impressive win on Hall's record as far as the market's concerned happened in 2015 when he beat Artem Lobov as an underdog. Otherwise, he's won like he was supposed to win. And more importantly, he's just not active enough for me to have any confidence in backing him, even in that underdog role, where what I see with Topuria, he's a guy with his trajectory going up, where I think you're going to have to, like, if this fight happens, if he didn't fight Hall on Saturday and Topuria had 2 more fights and then fought Hall and Topuria happened to win, I think he'd be minus 400 in this spot. Because stylistically, even the data shows Hall's not going to be able to use that one trick against him. It doesn't appear to me, at least. So I think it's a favorite or pass situation. And if they keep betting this down, they're going to force me to get involved.
Yeah, James.
Unless James scares us all, says, you know, no, you're wrong. He's going to get that trick. He's going to do that. You know, he's going to make it do his role and get it done.
Yeah, that's the thing here, James. It's very tough to prepare for a guy like Ryan Hall, who, like, even in the Gray Maynard fight, if you guys remember that one, anytime Gray Maynard would try to engage, Ryan Hall would just fall to his back or just flop to his back, and Gray Maynard's like, I want none of that. And why would he, right? He wants to go out there and try to outstrike Ryan Hall, but Ryan Hall has that just lack of disdain in terms of respecting his opponent's striking because he doesn't give a shit about being taken down. That's why he'll throw these spinning kicks and this crazy unorthodox striking, just because if he, you know, gets caught slacking, what's the worst that's going to happen? His opponent's going to take him down. Great. You're in my realm now. So James, how do you prepare for a guy like Ryan Hall? And do you think that Topuria has the skill set to go out there and beat him?
Real quick, what's the line on Hall by submission?
Hall by submission is currently sitting at plus 430, plus 350, plus 300.
That's the play to me. To me, that's the only play for me. And here's why. I mean, everything you guys are saying about Topuria is spot on, in my opinion. I love the kid. I think he's a savage. I think he's going to be able to dictate where this fight takes place. I think he's going to it's like if I replace Ryan Hall, let's take Ryan Hall out. Let's just talk about Topuria for a second. Topuria, great striker, good puncher, good power, great wrestling, great grappling, good cardio. He's got it all, right? And I agree with what Yanni said. You know, 2 fights from now, this kid's going to be here. Now, let's interject Ryan Hall to where it's like, if you're doing this created character thing on Madden, on Xbox, danger factor here for Ryan Hall is 99. You know what I mean? So it's like, and when I'm betting, I try to avoid X factors, right? I try to minimize X factors, these things that, like, man, does he got the heater? Or Ryan Hall has the equivalent of a 1-punch knockout on the ground. And I could see Topuria playing on the ground with him, and that scares me. And here's the thing. This is the last thing is, I actually have a guy fighting Darren Elkins, who also fought Ryan Hall. And what Hall does so good is, like you guys are saying, he doesn't care if he gets taken down, so he can throw with reckless abandonment. He's got great kicks. His range is long. and we're talking about Elkins. We were talking about who was the other one?
Maynard.
Lobov, Maynard. The thing is none of those guys punch like Topuria. So I'm constantly doing this back and forth thing. And for me, when I start doing that, I'm like, man, just cut your losses and get out. For me, a small play on Hall by submission would be okay. If you want to go Topuria, I don't mind it. I don't like where the line's at right now. And I'll be honest with you guys, if I played it, I wouldn't feel great about it. You know what I mean? I'd feel kind of icky on the inside if I played that. So I think Topuria is going to win, but putting the money down, was it at 220, 230? Man, Hall is, golly, man, his jiu-jitsu is next level, man. You can't count that dude out. I do think Topuria is going to win this fight, and probably convincingly so. But when that danger factor is a 99, man, they can end a fight like that. And then you're Topuria. I can see a situation where Topuria is whooping his ass for 13 and a half minutes, and then Hall and Minari rolls, and we're sitting here
fuck.
You know what I mean? I've been there before. Yeah. You know what I mean? You're like, God, and you can't even be mad because you knew what you were getting into whenever you started it. And then whenever those happen for me, I'm just like, man, nah, I'm just gonna move on. So Hall by sub is the play for me. It's a small play, but that's the play for me.
I like it. Yeah, I'm on the Topuria side here too, and if I'm not mistaken, he's actually one of the first ever black belts to come out of Spain as well. So he holds that really high up in his accolades, and he's very good in that range. I actually first stumbled upon him when he fought Brian Boland back at Cage Warriors 94 back in 2018, and I saw the odds. He was a slight underdog, plus 150-ish, and I'm like, let me just look into this kid. And there was great tape out there on him, great takedowns, great submissions, great choke artist. He goes out there and he really goes for it, and he was wiping the mat with these guys. But the issue is the level of competition going up to the Brian Boland fight was a little bit questionable. So I ultimately passed on an official side, but I did take a little bit of a stab on him at plus 150, and it paid off for me. He gets a dart stroke within a minute and a half. Just shows you what kind of skill level this guy truly has. And I was just like, I can't wait for this guy to come to the UFC. And luckily he did. Made his debut against Zalal. He did slow down in that third round. I will chalk it up to him taking that fight on relatively short notice. So let's give him the benefit of the doubt there. And then obviously he didn't really
5 days notice.
Much. 5 days notice, right? Something crazy. Good for him to overcome that, especially against a Yusuf Zalal that was streaking at the time, right? The guy came into the UFC 3 straight wins in 8 months or something like that, and then he runs into Ilia Topuria. Another thing about Topuria is that I do think he will have the better of the striking exchanges. I do think he'll telegraph those shots coming his way from Ryan Hall and then get inside and get his boxing going. I think he might even finish Ryan Hall. The only thing is he's so slimy and greasy to get a hold of that I don't know if he'll be able to put together a finishing combination of any sort. But I am going to go with the Topuria side of things here. I am going to take him to win this fight via KO, probably second or third round in this spot. I'm also expecting to see better cardio from him here too, especially considering he's having a full training camp, and this is the biggest fight of his life, right? Ryan Hall, nobody wants to fucking fight this guy. Nobody wants to step in the cage where Ryan Hall and Topuria is like, I'm 24 years old and I'm a streaking prospect. Put me in there, coach, because I think I can win this fight, and I love that type of confidence from this guy. All right, let's keep this train moving along. Next up, we got Nico Price going up against Michel Pereira. Very, very fun fight here. Yanni, I'm actually going to let you kick this one off for us. In terms of odds, I'll just tee that up for you guys real quick. Minus 175-ish for Pereira, plus 160, plus 165 is on Nico Price. Yanni, how do you like this one?
I wish I could back Nico Price in this spot because he appears to be always live and in an underdog role. There's always upside with that. But I just don't see the consistency that's key that James always talks about. I mean, he's fought 4 times since 2019. Impressive. But he's won once. He's cashed 1 ticket for you. And he just, even in that dog role, he's just not a big enough dog to where I get excited to back him. And I'm comfortable even if he loses. You got to know going in, if you're not comfortable with throwing, 3 out of every 5 tickets out, then don't be taking plus 400s because that's exactly what you're going to be doing. I mean, don't even take plus 300s because that's what you're going to be doing. If you can't throw 3 out of 5 tickets out and sleep comfortably, then, just look at the favorites. I'm okay with that, knowing long-term it's going to result in profit for me. I'm okay looking like a fool in the short term if long-term I'm going to be holding the money. But I just don't see enough plus money on the Nico Price. And with the favorite, again, the high potential, I hate putting that moniker, the high potential low achiever, because you get it through the UFC, you achieved a lot. But but it's always about how much potential and ability if he just takes it serious. And that kind of narrative always worries me. And again, it's noise, not signal, but you still gotta pay attention because it's noise, but he's a favorite. So if there's any truth to that noise, it's going to cost you. And as a favorite, there's a lot of downside risk. So no, I'm okay passing on a fight like this.
James, it's obviously hilarious seeing fighters that are 34, 35 fights into the career that finally decide to be disciplined. And that's what we're getting here with Michel Pereira, who like blew his wad against Tristan Connolly. And obviously we know how that fight plays out.
Yeah.
And then in his next fight against Chaos Williams, we see, everybody's expecting to be a chaotic fight, yet we see a very disciplined approach from Pereira. It's still, being flashy a little bit, but being a little bit more conscious about what's coming back his way and even landing takedowns in the third round. I don't know if he's ever landed a takedown in his career up until that point, but it seemed like he's very much tightening up the screws now that he's on the big stage. How do you think he fares here against Nico Price, especially with Nico Price having that one punch crazy knockout power, no matter which, you could have him on his head and he can still probably knock you out. But how do you feel about Nico Price and Michel Pereira here?
I go back to the X factors and consistency, and both these guys are wild as shit. Pereira is, he's all over the place. The thing about Pereira, that Tristan Connolly fight really just turned me completely off them. He's finally starting to, in my viewpoint, he's finally starting to resurrect himself again to where I'm like, all right, maybe I'll think about putting some money on this dude. And then I go over to Nico Price and I'm like, man, this guy's getting, he's up kicking, knocking people out. He's hammer fisting from his back, knocking people out. And it's just like, man, surely this guy can't keep doing this. And he keeps doing it. You know what I mean? He keeps finding ways to win. I'm with Yanni on this one. I'm staying away from it. Gun to my head, I got to go Michel Pereira. The thing about Pereira that I really like in this stylistic matchup is Nico is not hard to find. He's not hard to hit. He is extremely durable, though. He's really durable. But, man, if Pereira can find you, he's going to find you again and again and again and again, and the power is only going to get cranked up. He's not a guy Pereira is not a guy you want to fight if you don't move your head, because he's going to find you. And for me, I lean Pereira here, but it would not surprise me if Nico did some kind of crazy
spinning
Nico
back.
Price backflip. Yeah, you know
Spinning
what I mean?
back uppercut.
I thought that Tim Means was going to run through him, and he was. And then bang, he's got the eraser, he's got the power. I think Pereira is a lot more defensively sound than Tim Means. I like Pereira in this one. I'm not playing it. There's too many crazy X factors for me. I'm with Yanni on this one. I'm going to pass, but gun to my head, I got to go Pereira.
Historically speaking, whenever Nico Price fights, I would try to target the under 2.5 because I always expect to be crazy chaos. He has obviously killer instinct, crazy knockout power. More often not, depending on who he's facing, you can get the same thing. The Abdul Razak Al Hassan fight being, prime example number one there. But when you get a Jeff Neal, Abdul Razak Al Hassan, and I'll even throw Michel Pereira into the discussion here. I think he has the power to knock out Nico Price, even though Nico Price is hella durable in this spot. But I think that we're going to see discipline Michel Pereira this weekend, like I've been talking about earlier. I think we'll see him just be a little bit more cautious about what's coming back his way, especially from that long, lanky, weird frame of Nico Price. Shout out to one of my viewers from earlier on this week in the stream. They called Nico Price, he pretty much has a Dorito body. It's crazy. He's just shaped like a Dorito because his freaking his shoulders are just so wide. It's absolutely insane. But he's able to just generate powers from such crazy angles, which is why he's able to knock out Randy Brown from his back, and why he's able to get that up kick knockout over James Vick. But Michel Pereira, as long as he minds his P's and Q's, brings that controlled chaos, I think he should be able to go out there, outpoint Nico Price, maybe land a couple of takedowns just to nullify the power that's probably going to be coming his way. But then again, Nico Price has power from pretty much everywhere. I think he grinds his fight out, though. I think he outpoints it. I think we see this fight go to a decision, and I'm going to be taking Michel Pereira to win by decision. Nick, you're wrapping this one up for us, brother. How do you feel about this matchup?
I'm avoiding this fight as well. It's going to be chaos and crazy. I agree with what you guys said. I do think Pereira has been fighting a lot more discipline, which is good to see. But he's also an exciting guy to watch, because when he does turn it on, or when he decides to do something wild, of course he can do it too. But that Chaos Williams fight, let's face it, he had to be disciplined in that fight. Williams has so much power. He touches people and he puts them out. So I think he fought very intelligent in that fight. It was not an easy fight to win. So I think he's making some mental progress And I think he's technically better than Price, like you said. I think he is going to be able to outpoint Price. But Price, as James said in the last fight with Hall, I mean, talk about finishing ability. I mean, he's dangerous too as well. And any moment of the fight, I mean, he's got enough aggression and power to get it done. So he, in his rematch with Luque, I was pretty impressed, even though it didn't work out for him. I thought he fought well. He gave Luque a lot of problems in that fight, and he improved from the first meeting. So I do see the improvements that Price is making in this game. I just think this is a difficult fight for him to win unless he gets a finish. So I agree with you here, but as far as the bet goes, man, it's tough. I think you can't really lay the chalk right now. It's minus 180 at Circa. I would not lay minus 180 against Nico Price right now. Not in this matchup, you know what I mean, and stylistically the way it is. So, yeah, for me, I'm staying away from it, but it should be exciting. It might hit the scorecards. I could see it. That's probably where the value is because it's going against a little bit of the narrative. So I get that. But I could see it ending. I could see it maybe going to the scorecards as well. It should be pretty fun and entertaining for sure. I'm looking forward to it.
Shout out to my guy Cody Softic, who I do my propping you up show with on Thursday nights, but he threw in a little greasy theory, which I'm kind of think has a little bit of legs. Disciplined Michel Pereira has been around for 2 fights, and those 2 fights have been inside the Apex with no crowd, no fans, nothing. Now he's over there, UFC 264, Conor McGregor card, sold out show, all these fans just cheering him on. You don't think he's going to want to go out there and flip a couple times and put on a little bit of a show and try to get that craziness going to rile up the crowd and potentially get a performance or fight of the night bonus? That's the only thing that's really keeping me off of Michel Pereira, is that I feel like he has that switch that he just can't control at times where he's like, I need to be entertaining. Let me just switch this on and we'll see what happens there. But yeah, I'm still on Pereira here, and I'm going to take him by decision. All right, let's move on to the prelim headliner here. We got Max Griffin going up against the resurging Carlos Condit. In terms of odds, we got minus 185 on Max Griffin, plus 170 on the Natural Born Killer. And I'm actually going to let James kick this one off for us. How do you feel about Max Griffin? Not really an up-and-comer, 35 years old, been in the UFC for a little while now, but Carlos Condit obviously came back from retirement. He's 2-0 against somewhat favorable matchups, we could say, and fights that played out in his favor. But James, how do you think he matches up here against Max Griffin?
What's the over here?
2.5.
The line on the over.
2.5 over minus 200.
For me, I mean, I like Griffin. I like Griffin in this fight. I read a stat the other day that Carlos Condit has been taken down more times than anybody else in UFC history, and he's only been attempted 27th. So Max really isn't a big wrestler. He's going to strike with him, but like I love Carlos. I grew up watching him, and I just don't think I think that that fight with Rory and that fight with Robbie changed his life. Or I'm sorry, with Robbie changed his life. And then there's fights like that where you just can't come back from. And I think that's one of them. He just hasn't been the same since then. Rory, I think, was the same. Robbie Lawler was the same when he fought Rory and when he fought Carlos. Like, those guys just haven't been the same since, I mean, and rightfully so. But I think Condit's best days are past him, and that's no disrespect. I love Condit. I'm a huge fan. But I like Max Griffin in this fight. I like the over in this fight. I don't know if I'm going to pay that for it. But if you want to throw once again, if we're playing to play, I go Max Griffin, parlay Max Griffin in the over, or Max Griffin by decision. I like those plays here. But I just don't. It's really difficult for me to picture a scenario on how Condit wins this fight. I don't see where he's going to win. I don't think he's going to knock out Max. I don't think he's going to sub Max. I don't think he has the wrestling to decision Max. I don't think he's going to outstrike him for 15 minutes. That would be the only way, is if he outstruck him for 15 minutes. But I just don't. I think Max. This is Max's fight to win or lose, in my opinion. He's got more ways to win this fight. For that reason, I'm going Max. I don't think he's going to finish Condit. Max by decision is my play on this one.
I'm pretty much going to echo everything James just said here. However, I do think that we might see him take a little bit of a grapple-heavy approach here, as just like you stated, Carlos Condit's takedown defense has been horrendous, and I mean that with all respect, right? Like, he just doesn't seem to be able to stop takedowns, even against Matt Brown, who seemed to be really gassed and slowing down later in his fights. He was successful in getting that fight to the ground and controlling Condit for at least 2 minutes there, albeit not really getting much damage off from on top, and it seemed like Carlos Condit was really working pretty well off of his back. But I think that Max Griffin will be successful at takedowns, land some solid ground and pound, and even on the feet, I don't think it's as wide of an advantage for Condit on the feet, because he has more tools with his kickboxing and his Muay Thai compared to what Max Griffin has with his kickboxing. But I do think that his pace, pressure, and staying in Condit's face will nullify the striking style of Carlos Condit. He needs to be the one that's moving forward so he can get his like 3-punch combinations off with that kick ending off. And that's always been that's been a signature move of his, is always finishing his combinations with a high kick that just comes over your shoulder that you just can't see. Hopefully Max Griffin is ready to go for that, push him back, land a couple takedowns, control this fight. And I like the overs as well. I don't think that Carlos Condit is going to get finished here. It's been a long time since he's been finished. And even with Carlos Condit finishing, like his last finish was Thiago Alves where he broke his nose. So let's just chalk that up to, a broken nose. Before that, Martin Kampmann beats him in the 4th round, but this is a 3-rounder. We know what Carlos Condit's game is. When he goes 5 rounds, he gets stronger as the fight goes on. And then if you want to go even deeper than that, the last time he got a legitimate knockout in a 3-round fight, Dong Young Kim, flying knee knockout 10 years ago. And then in terms of submissions, in case Griffin does want to take this fight to the ground and see if he can control him from there, there have been moments that Condit has had some submission offense off of his back. He had Michael Chiesa in a pretty deep armbar before Chiesa was able to get out of that. The last time he submitted somebody, Carlo Prater, 2008, WEC. Not even in the UFC. So it's been a long time since. It looks nice off the on the surface, but when you really dig deep into it, the jiu-jitsu from Carlos Condit is more so show than actually being completed. And that's why I think the issue is here. People might be blinded by that, but I think that Griffin will have some success in implementing his game in all aspects here. Nick, how do you feel about this matchup between Griffin and the natural born killer?
I like what you guys said, and I agree with you guys as well. I do think that it's just Griffin's fight to win or lose here in this spot, right? I think he can hang with Condit on the feet. Like you said, the pressure, the power that he's got confidence right now. I think he's probably the best he's been in the striking element of things. He just recently had a newborn child, right? I think he's got that extra motivation. And you could see the happiness and the hunger last time he fought in the octagon, right? I mean, he was definitely, I think mentally he was in a different state in his life, which I think will bode him well in this fight as well. And I do think he will get the takedowns here. Condit is a great fighter. He's smart, obviously. But I just don't think that he is in the prime of his career. So he's going to be susceptible to those takedowns. I think he will absorb some damage on the feet. I'm not so confident. I know it's been a while since he's been finished, but that's why I think that there's a possibility of Griffin maybe landing that kill shot along the way and putting him out. So I wouldn't be surprised if Griffin does end up finishing this fight, but I do think it probably more realistic. It goes to scorecards. He wins maybe 3-zip in a competitive type of 3 unanimous decision fight, or maybe 2-1. 29-28 or something like that. And it'll be fairly competitive, but at the same time, clear enough for Griffin to win the fight. He should outpoint him here.
Yanni, before I kick it on over to you, I just want to ask James a quick question from a coach's perspective. I know a lot of people that were on Court McGee against Carlos Condit when Condit made his return, right? And that, Yanni, again, you're more so on the numbers side of here, but stylistically speaking, going into that fight, everybody thought the way Court McGee wins his fight, let's take Condit down. Let's control him. This is his biggest flaw in his game. What do you think led to Court McGee potentially? Well, not even potentially. He shot for 0 takedowns, no takedowns, zip. He went out there and tried to fight Carlos Condit's game and beat him. What do you think was going on in Court McGee's mind to just abandon the takedown completely?
You're asking Yanni or me?
James.
Oh, James.
Yeah, I think a lot of times what happens, and Nick and I kind of talk about this on the show we do. I think what happens a lot of times is when these guys get together, there's like this frantic mode. It's usually like the first half of the first round, first 2.5 minutes, everybody starts to like, they're trying to kill you. And then after a while, they realize, hey, like I'm settling into this fight. I'm going to be here for a minute. I can't knock this guy out. Let me settle this down a little bit. And a lot of times what happens when they settle that down, they start sparring each other. And whenever a fighter thinks that the fight is close, or I'm sorry, whenever they feel like they're winning or the fight is close, they get one-track minded, right? So for me, what I teach my guys is like the ability to blend. Like we're doing everything. We're striking, we're grappling, and it's really difficult for some people to comprehend that. So like if Condit is not, if I'm Court McGee, I'm trying to tell you the mindset that I think that was here. If I'm Court McGee, he's not hurting me. Like I'm hitting him still. This is a close fight, and I think I'm winning. Well, you were just wrong. You know what I mean? Like I just don't feel like he needed. I don't think he thought he needed to take him down because I thought he was winning, and to me that's I don't want to go into like poor coaching, poor fight IQ. You know what I mean? Like that's just you gotta close those rounds strong, and I think Court didn't do a good job of like saying, hey, this is my round. You know what I mean? You can't you can't leave that. You got to give the judges a reason to pick you to win that round. And I just don't think he did that. And I think he thought he was winning the fight. And I think he was like, Condit's not hurting me. He's not touching me very much. And that's where I thought his mindset was on that. So right, wrong, or indifferent, that's where I think he was on it.
Yeah, if you look at the statistics, it was 88 to 84 for Condit in terms of significant strikes in that fight. So I kind of understand that mentality, but you got to believe when you have such a giant advantage over a fighter in a certain aspect of the game, I'm surprised he didn't choose to exploit it. So Yanni, I'll actually swing this on over to you. How do you feel about this fight between Condit and Griffin? It seems like your eyes lit up as soon as James Krause asked for that over.
Because everything James said made perfect sense.
Yeah.
Because I was thinking the exact same thing. Why isn't he being exploited with takedowns? And it never happened. And now I come to learn it was being stopped. It wasn't really even much being attempted. You know what I mean? Like, there's a big difference between stopping it and not even having to stop it. And that's what it seems like happened. And even in the second time, like you said, Matt Brown got that one takedown, but it wasn't enough to do anything as far as winning him a fight or even the round, I don't think. Here's my only problem with backing Max Griffin. I had him in his last fight against Song Kenan, and I wrote down fade next because if you remember, Kenan was coming in on fire. He was the hot name coming into that. I think he had 2 impressive wins, favored in that spot, and boom, Griffin gets the finish quickly, the knockout. And I thought he was going to be overvalued next time. And if he's up against an opponent he could has those doesn't have advantages against, I'm going to look to fade him. But this matchup, I don't think he's at disadvantages against Condit. Condit, not enough volume striking. And then, like you guys all made the case perfectly clear, if he does use his wrestling and takedowns, much easier path to victory also, as far as you look at the history for Condit takedown defense. So, yeah, it's Griffin or pass. I haven't bet it, but I agree with everything you guys said.
All right, I love it. That brings us to our main card now. And I do want to give you guys a quick shout out. 500 live viewers. Shout out to everybody that's tuning in and watching the show tonight.
Like button.
Make sure you guys hit that like button, spinning back, kick that like button. You know what I mean? Whatever it is, put that like button to sleep. Make sure you're pressing it. That's all that matters. Hit that subscribe as well too. Also, I have their Twitter handles in the description below, so make sure you guys go follow these guys. But then again, if you guys are watching my show, more than likely you guys already follow these guys. So I guess that's just, it doesn't even make any sense for me to say that. But let's move on to the main card here. First and foremost, we got Sean O'Malley taking on Chris Moutinho. And honestly, I'll kick the breakdown off for this one. I'd rather see Sean O'Malley just sit on the sidelines and wait for a proper opponent than take somebody like Chris Moutinho. I don't want to shit on fighters or anything like that, but I feel like Moutinho is just out of his league in this fight. He's very hittable. Seems like, all the fights I've seen of his from the past, he's always getting lit up in that first round. I believe the kid's name was Ajim, who was able to have a ton of success in that first round against him. And it seemed like Moutinho took the Homer Simpson approach and just let Ajim gas himself out and then eventually finish him in the second round. But the next fight, Andrew Salas, a guy that was 6-5 going into that fight, and it seemed like Salas blew his wad about 3 minutes into that fight, and Moutinho was really able to get his striking off and looked, a little bit better than I truly think he was. The commentary team, I believe it was John Morgan and CM Punk, who were calling that fight. They're saying, "Oh, he looks amazing. He looks really good." But of course, you're going to look amazing when you're almost fighting a punching bag that a guy who just has no gas or anything like that. So obviously Moutinho is going to look great there. But here against Sean O'Malley, man. O'Malley, I haven't seen the face-offs yet, but I'm sure O'Malley looks like he's a weight class or two above him. He's a massive dude at this 135-pound division. And yeah, I think he's absolutely going to light him up. It's very hard to find a way to play this fight. The only way that I'm looking at it is possibly O'Malley in round 1, but at -150. And I wish we would get a little bit of a plus money on that. But again, I feel like he just goes in there and just absolutely starches him. I'd be surprised if Moutinho pulls this one out of his butt. But I do think that O'Malley wins this fight more often than not and is more than deserving of that -800 price tag on him. Nick, how do you feel about this matchup?
I agree with you. I mean, obviously, coming in on short notice doesn't bode well either. I don't think he has the wrestling to take O'Malley down and give him problems on the ground. At least not good enough. He's not the better striker here. So O'Malley should roll here. He should be able to honestly get a finish in this fight. I don't think it's going to go to the scorecards. I think O'Malley will catch him and finish him along the way. But the problem is the price tag is just too high to bet this fight. So I think you have to leave it alone. We at Circa right now have it at -675. There's some places that have it at -1,000 out there, right? So I did get a message from another sports book, and they said, "Why are you guys so low on O'Malley?" minus 675. To be honest with you, we haven't received a max bet on him yet. I'm waiting. Let's go. Somebody bet that minus 675, and then we'll move it, right? I mean, until we do, I think even though I expect O'Malley to roll here, I'm not saying he's not going to win, right? But I'm not afraid to take a bet at high chalk like that either, right? I mean, if we suffer a loss, if somebody comes in and max bets it, we take a loss, we'll get over it. It's no problem. But at the same time, there is some problems O'Malley kind of has on his own, right? I know those leg issues or whatnot have kind of – in his last fight, they were better. He was more prepared. They didn't stick out as much. He said, look, everybody's saying I have fragile legs or whatnot. And now look at me. You know what I mean? It wasn't an issue in this fight. It's not as bad as you guys think. It's true. But what we've seen in the past, I mean, fighters get injured. Stuff happens. Craziness happens in the cage. There's no way you can lay 700, minus 700, even in this spot, even though I think he's going to roll. All of us think he's going to roll here and he's going to win the fight. So for me, I'm staying away from it. I'm expecting that line to move up even at circa. It probably will be at minus 800 or 900 tomorrow at some point. But for right now, I think O'Malley wins, but I'm not touching it. I'm staying far away from this fight.
Yanni, what do you feel about the inside the distance line here on O'Malley sitting around minus 300, minus 325? Do you see any value on that at all, considering how much of a mismatch this fight seems to be?
The only possible thing you could bet on here is the total rounds, some kind of prop, or the underdog, and you probably shouldn't. And here's what I mean. Anyone betting the favorite, I see in sports books that have minus 900, minus 950, minus 1,000. I'm going to make this so simple. This is like basic sports betting 101. Anyone betting Sean O'Malley above minus 850, I am telling you with 100% certainty is a losing long-term bettor. They cannot turn profit long-term. There's zero possibility they're doing it. Here's why. At minus 850, he's higher than 850, mind you. But at minus 850 alone, the break-even's 90%. We already said at fair sports books, at fair ones, their hold is 5%. So right now, you have to overcome that 5% hold. So you have to conclude O'Malley wins this fight 95% of the time just to break even. Not to say it's a profitable bet, but to say it's a break-even bet at best. So you don't factor in a black swan. Every model on the planet has to. I don't care what it is. He wakes up with a headache. His girlfriend pisses him off 5 minutes before the fight. He slips on the way. Anything could happen, bro. He gets a text. He looks at a DM that gets under his skin the wrong way for any reason. We don't know. But every modeler on the planet factors in a black swan event. COVID was one. That's why economists that factored in black swan didn't go broke, because things do happen. And I'm telling you, that's why you can't bet O'Malley. I live 10 minutes from the Las Vegas Strip, and I can promise you right now, as I'm speaking, there's 1,000 people making terrible bets that are winning, and there's 1,000 people making good bets that are losing. But the guys that are continuing making the good bet, probably, if there's 1,000 losing, then there's 10 winning. Sorry, math was wrong. If those 10, though, they're going to keep doing what they're doing, they'll be up at the end. The 1,000 won't. That's where the difference is. So, again, this is as basic sports betting 101. You can't bet O'Malley because of the price. The sportsbook's already told you that. Nick's waiting for a limit bet. He's sitting there. He's saying, come on, come give me a limit bet, please. And they won't do it because no one sharp will do it. So they're going to wait for a VIP guy with a high credit limit. He's going to do it, and he's going to win that bet because O'Malley's going to go in there, knock him out, and the guy's going to say, I made a great bet. And the sportsbook's going to pay him so quickly, they're not going to be able to wait to get him his money. They're going to run, before they even announce it, they're going to hand him his money because they know it's coming right back with everything else he has on his credit limit. It's just a matter of time because he placed a terrible bet, and they know it. And that's how they rated him. Tell me I'm wrong, Nick. Tell me I'm wrong.
You are not wrong at all. Like I said, that's why even if they do win a bet like that, you're right. A lot of the sharps, we're riddled with sharps. That's why a lot of times it's almost unfair when I say there's sharp action on this fight. Because to be honest with you guys, I mean, we're a hub for sharp players, right? At Circa, because we don't restrict players.
They're a legit book. One of the only ones in this city. I've been here 20 plus years, came as a runner, so I know sharp. Stardust was sharp. They're one of the only sharp originating books out here, dude. Everyone else just copies their shit.
Well, and it's just, I mean, we just have more sharp players than we do like public players, you know what I mean, as far as overall. So, yeah, we have so many sharp players betting with us, but it's fine. I mean, we don't mind it either. We like it. We welcome the sharp action because, look, sharps lose as well, right? And we take that information and we get to utilize it and we try to use it to our best abilities that we can. But again, we have a lot of action that comes in. We're starting to see more public action as well. But yeah, we're waiting. No sharp better, like Yanni said, has bet at max. So he's absolutely right. If there is going to be a player that bets it, it's probably going to be a more square type of player or a board cleaner that's getting a scalp out there as well, right? Somebody that's coming in with no opinion whatsoever, just taking that line because he's
minus 650, getting plus 672 on the other side.
Right, exactly. You know, so you might see something like that, and we might bump it a little bit, depending on who the player is. If we do get some real sharp action, then we'll bump it a little bit stronger. But until then, like I said, we're not afraid to take a bet even at high chalk, even though I think it is going to win.
Perfect. All right, James, I know you got a little bit of an out here, so by all means, if you ever have to step out, just let us know. But I do want to tee you up on this with two things, obviously. So obviously, who do you think wins this fight? But the first and foremost, remember when Sean O'Malley put out that video calling out Ricky Simone? Duck, Simone, whatever. Do you think that was Sean O'Malley playing, 4D chess here? Like saying, I know Ricky Simone's not making 135, but I just want the public perception to be, I'm taking this, I will accept it. Like, is that what you think he was doing?
100%. 1,000%. 1,000%. Bet the house on O'Malley. No, I'm just kidding.
He says mortgage the house.
No, I mean you just can't at that. I mean, once again, if we're playing to play, throw them in a parlay, get the value. But even then you're like, you're not. It's not worth it. You know what I mean? It's just not. It's not worth the risk that you're gonna lose. You need to win that bet 10 times to break even on the underdog. You know what I mean? And the reality is O'Malley probably wins that bet 95% of the time, but I'm not willing to risk it, especially with O'Malley's durability being in question so much. He's been hurt many times and seems to have some type of foot problem. I don't know. He's gonna smoke this dude inside or under a round and a half. As soon as it was announced, I went in and put in under 1.5. I don't even know what the line was. Honestly, I didn't look at it. I think he's going to get this dude out of there. This dude's been knocked out 3 or 4 times on the regional scene against subpar guys. O'Malley, I have my complaints about O'Malley, but one thing he is incredible at is he's a master at range manipulation, and he's got some pop in both hands. And if he comes out to shark on this kid, he's going to get him out of there early. I think he'll get it done in under a round and a half. That's, the play here is the under, in my opinion.
Makes sense.
Awesome. I love it. All right, let's keep this train moving along. The only weight miss on the card, we had Irene Aldana coming in 3.5 pounds over, not looking the greatest either. And Yana Kunitskaya is not new to this either. Her last opponent, Ketlin Vera, also came in overweight, and Kunitskaya was able to get the victory that night as well. I believe, Nick, I'm actually going to have you kick this fight off for us. Who do you like here between Kunitskaya and Aldana in a fight where the odds are, minus 120-ish Aldana, plus 100 Kunitskaya?
I think you got to go Kunitskaya's way, to be honest with you. I think I like the improvements in her game. Both of these ladies have improved since entering the UFC. I mean, pre-UFC, Invicta, and all the fights that they had before that, they were fighting pretty decent level of competition, right? I mean, so when they came over to the UFC, we expected them to be able to perform and to hang right away. But I think they take their game to another level. They put the work in. They worked on several areas that they needed to become better. So both ladies, you could say that about. But I think Kunitskaya is a little bit more mentally stable right now. She's confident. That was a big win over Rivera. A lot of people think it was controversial, but to be honest with you, man, I mean, that last little flurry with those elbows and splitting her open, I mean, you can argue that was enough to steal that round. There's no question about that, right? And her ability to grind fighters out is what I like the most here. So I think she could strike with Aldana. Aldana obviously has more power in the feet, so you got to be worried about that and concerned. But I don't think she's going to be in that space as often as most people think. I think she's going to be able to push her up against the cage. I think she's going to get some takedowns. I think she's going to be able to land some ground and pound. And I think she's going to be able to steal this on the scorecards as well. So for me, it's Kunitskaya or pass. And this is a play I gave out on UFC Fight Pass. And make sure you check out Yanni and I. Our official plays are all on UFC Fight Pass. Quick, shameful plug there for us, Yanni. But I also gave this out. This was the one play I gave out on ESPN as well with James Krause and Brett Okamoto. So Kunitskaya, for me, I think is a play here. It's dog or pass. She's a slight dog. You could bet her, I think, is a slight favorite as well, -120, -130. Anything beyond -130, though, you got to be careful about. But I know James Krause does not agree with me here, so I'll let you go.
No,
Yeah,
Yanni's got to go next. Yanni's got to go next.
Yeah, I'll get to you, James. Don't worry. I can see as soon as I said that she missed weight, you're like, God, motherfucker, that. But Yanni, the line, it seemed it opened up roughly around plus 155, plus 160 is for Yanni Kunitskaya, and steady money been coming in, pushing her to a plus 100 dog now. How do you feel about this fight and that line movement?
My problem is Kunitskaya's built up a lot of equity with me, and it's hard for me to favor her if I have her in an underdog spot. Like, I've backed her in her fights, in 4 of her last fights, and she's come through. I think I've even backed her in the one that she lost. Like, because I was seeing the improvements and that the market wasn't respecting it at all. Like, giving her no respect for any of her wins. And the reason for that, from what I saw, at least the box score, was she's willing to do it unimpressively. And here's what I mean by that. That's no disrespect. That's like there's some players that get it, that are worth more wins to a team, but they're not going to get you fantasy points, but they're worth more wins. Kunitskaya is that type of fighter where I don't know. I don't do MMA fantasy, but it don't appear to me she's going to light it up for you because she's willing to hold you against that cage, grind it out. She's a smart fighter, and that's why I don't think Aldana may have an opportunity to use that power. So for me, I lean with Nick here because of Kunitskaya being an underdog, and I think still, again, here's the market. She's winning and winning and winning, but showing her no respect. And for me, I think that's a mistake, but I haven't bet it. I will say that I haven't bet this fight so far.
All right, James, just based on your reaction, it seems like you're on Aldana in this spot, but I do want to pose a quick question to you regarding Yana Kunitskaya's last fight against Rivera, where she gave up almost 9 minutes of control time. Obviously, she spent a lot of that fight on her back, but she was still able to dish out 215 strikes compared to the 35 strikes that Rivera threw out there. So what do you think should be scored more, the fighter on bottom throwing the damage, or the fighter on top controlling the fighter on bottom?
I think that's going to be, I think you got to look at that as a per case basis, right? Like, I mean, like, are we talking like this? You know what I mean? Like, it's all, what is the damage? You got to take, there's so many factors that you got to take into play on that, in my opinion, it's a per case basis. So, and then positioning on the ground, are we talking about guard? Are we talking about half guard, mount, back? Like, what position are we talking about? That for me, it's case by case basis on, how significant the strikes from bottom are. I mean, if somebody's, popping a coconut from underneath with an elbow and there's blood everywhere, that's we should score that. But if you're in bottom mount getting your face pounded in, we should score that, so there's one extreme to the next. As far as the fight goes, I couldn't fade these guys more. I think Aldana's gonna I do, man. And I'll tell you why. And I know what they're thinking. These guys work from a strictly betting standpoint, and correct me if I'm wrong, guys. We're looking at essentially a coin flip fight, so you got to go dog in a coin flip fight, right? Am I wrong?
Yeah, that's how I looked at it. Like, I don't see enough to lay some chalk because you got to, like I always say, I call it the cost for admission. Like, am I willing to pay admission to go into this one? And like, to me, back in the favorite here, there's a lot, like there's a cover charge that's a little too much for me.
No, and if my brain stopped at a betting perspective, I would be in the same boat as these guys. So these guys aren't wrong. Stylistically, when I look at this fight, I mean, this is MMA math, and this is, once again, this is not the factor, it is a factor. A common opponent, Rivera, Yana won a very controversial decision that I thought she lost, and Aldana got her out of there in the first round. And once again, styles make fights, so that's, you can kind of take that, put it to the side. That doesn't, it's just a factor, just something to look at. Another thing that we're not taking into consideration is that fight with the apex, right? Yana wins fights by putting people on the fence. Like, let's be honest, she grinds people out. That's how she wins fights. And it's a lot easier to do in that apex cage. That's what is that? It's a 25-foot cage compared to a 30-foot cage. Aldana wins fights off of volume and footwork. And we're talking about 5 feet, and it doesn't seem like 5 feet is a lot. 5 feet all the way around is a lot more space to work with somebody that has great footwork and good volume. I like Aldana in the bigger cage here much better, and I think she's gonna out volume Kunitskaya. I think there'll be moments where Kunitskaya. The only thing that scares me is Kunitskaya holding her on the fence. I think Aldana. You got to think Aldana's addressed that in her camp. I mean, the volume is going to be difficult. To be honest with you guys, I think Yana is going to have a really difficult time finding her. Period. And Nick said something about how he thinks she can strike with her. I completely disagree. I think this is going to be one-way traffic striking with Aldana swinging the hammer. And it won't be like super significant. And I could be wrong. These guys have tooled me on fight weeks before. So there was one this has been probably 3 months ago where Yanni gave his picks and I disagree with almost every single one of them and they all won. You know what I mean? I could be wrong here. You know what I mean?
It's come the other way around too, though, bro. It's flipped also. So
right. Yeah.
So when I look at this fight stylistically, Aldana has a huge advantage. I would bet this up to 150, to be honest with you. And I would. I think Aldana takes this fight pretty easy. I really do.
That's what it opened at, James. At least the first book that went to market, they agreed with you. They opened at 150. And then even
I think
she
takes this 30-27 pretty easily, man. I really do.
Interesting.
And this is my biggest play. This is my biggest play on the card.
Wow.
I like it. I'm actually on the Kunitskaya side of things here. So I'm with Nick as well. I do think that we'll see Yana, who, in my opinion, I think she has serviceable enough striking to actually, not get knocked out and not get completely washed on the feet here. I do think she will be successful in terms of corralling Irene Aldana up against the cage. And this is Aldana coming off the biggest, spot in her career, a main event slot against Holly Holm, where she got thoroughly beaten pretty much everywhere. Like Holly Holm, it seems in this part of her career, she's going out there and, putting on a wrestling
apples
singlet.
And oranges, though. Yana ain't
No,
Holm.
for sure. No, for sure, though. But with Holly Holm, like notoriously a striker in the latter part of her career now, she's going to the wrestling. I believe she landed 5 of 14 takedowns or something on Aldana here, which really swayed the judges in terms of getting those rounds. And I think if Holm can land those takedowns, I think Yana will be able to do the same here, or at least corral her up against the cage, get some control time, maybe get some damage out there. And again, Aldana looked like shit on the scales this morning, and I mean that with all due respect. Like, it did not look like she had a good weight cut at all. She had her reasoning. It is what it is, but I do think that will come into play once they actually step in the cage, especially when she has to deal with that pressure and that grappling that I believe Kunitskaya will put on her. But again, I could be wrong here too.
She's never been a gasser though. Cardio's never been an issue for her ever. It has been for Yana though. And another thing is statistically, the person that misses weight wins more times than not.
There was this crazy stretch where there was like everybody who missed weight was like winning, but I think it's starting to teeter back the other way now, where it's starting to even out a little bit more. But you definitely make a great point regards to fighters that actually missed weight. We'll see how she actually looks come fight time. It seems like Ketlin Vera, when she missed weight, it really impacted her performance against Yana Kunitskaya, and Kunitskaya was able to take advantage of that. Let's see if it happens again here tomorrow night. All right, let's move on to the next fight here. We got Tai Tuivasa going up against Greg Hardy. In terms of odds, we got minus 130-ish on Tuivasa and plus 110 on Greg Hardy. And I believe Yanni, I'm actually going to get you to kick this one off for us, brother.
I'll tell you, listen, for me, I'm surprised. I think Hardy should be the favorite. And with the line moving the way it is, it's going even more towards Tuivasa. That's scaring me. So I can't wait to hear what Nick has to say, what's happening at the betting window. And here's why. Me and Nick talked about this off camera at Apex. And he's like, Tuivasa may go for, because I'm like, the only way Hardy loses this fight is if he gets taken down. He's like, Tuivasa may go for takedowns. And I'm like, but I see nothing there that he's going to do it. And for me, that's what made me so confident for Izzy over Vettori, because at least on paper, look to me, Vettori, 80% of his fight time in the UFC, he spent standing. So at least historically, he hasn't been down on the mat for a lot of the fight. And then 80% of his strikes were all to the head. And I'm like, for a striker like Izzy, he's going to figure him out in all 30 seconds. Like, so obviously he ain't mixing it up. He's not like, so for me, I didn't see where all of a sudden he's going to turn into this guy who's going to impose that will on him. I don't see where Tuivasa is going to impose that wrestling will on Hardy. And if he doesn't, I got the athleticism on my side. I got the height on my side. I got the reach on my side. And I think Tuivasa is overvalued because he won 2 straight fights where my guy Hardy's coming in off a loss. But look at those wins. Struve, 1-6 his last 7, and Hunsaker, 0 UFC wins. Again, not to knock them. You're at that level, not there by accident. But you got to weigh that strength of schedule. So for me, I'm surprised Tuivasa is a favorite, and even a bigger favorite today than he was last night. And that's what confuses me.
All right, James, how do you feel about this matchup between you? You seem to light up a little bit. I'm not sure which side that's for, but who do you like here between Tuivasa and Hardy?
My thing just cut out, so I missed a lot of it. But from what I heard Yanni say, I'm glad that I heard him say that, because whenever I seen the lines announced, I thought Hardy should have been the favorite as well. I couldn't believe it, and I was like, sometimes I have a tendency to this, and Yanni, we've talked about this. Like,
yep.
I have a thought,
and I told you,
head.
don't. You know more. Don't think they know more than you.
I know,
they have to factor. They're risk managers. They have to factor in the public, the squares. They're not just thinking about the sharp. They got to factor in the 99%. I always tell you that.
You do, and I did play it. The reason why I like Hardy is Hardy's longer, and I feel like Tuivasa is one of those guys that's too cool for school at times, to where his chin is so good you're probably not going to get him out of there. And he knows that, like, you're not going to finish me, so I'm just going to take my time here. And Hardy's been known to, put a decent pace on. The only thing that worries me about Hardy is I've seen him quit before. He's quit mentally before. That worries me. I have seen some much improvement. Hardy to me is like Michel Pereira kind of, right? Like, he did me dirty long ago, and now he's just finally starting to get back in my good graces, because he's shown some consistent improvement. I could see a scenario where he gets a little tired in the third, and Tuivasa hits him with something big or something like that.
That's what scares me.
Yeah, it scares me a little bit. But as far as like who the better fighter is here, I think it's Greg Hardy, and I'm not a Greg Hardy fan, but I think stylistically he matches up really well with Tuivasa. If I didn't have a big play on this, but I was like, man, I'm just going to sprinkle something on Hardy here. I think it's a good matchup for him. I really do.
James, I think you hit the nail on the head right there. Like, the two things that worry me about Greg Hardy, the cardio, especially if he goes out there and like just wings or bombs on him like he did against Marcin Tybura in that first round, and then just falls flat in that second round. Even the Maurice Green fight, it seemed like he was really starting to gas in that fight, but luckily for him, he was able to find that chin and get the finish there. But like we see what happens when he starts to mentally break and mentally fold. Fighters are able to take advantage of him, and I feel like Tai Tuivasa is one of those guys that can do that. Tuivasa 100%. More than likely will lose that first round. So I think this could also be a great live betting experience for anybody that goes about it that way. Like, you might get a better line on Tai Tuivasa going into that second round if you truly think he wins this fight. Because Greg Hardy, as we saw in his Ben Sassoli fight, which is probably his best performance to date, where he's just sticking and moving, leg kicks, stick and move. Don't, get overzealous. Don't try to think that you're going to finish this guy. And although I could see similarities between Ben Sassoli and Tai Tuivasa, I think we'll get more resistance and more counter strikes from Tuivasa that could potentially catch Greg Hardy and slowly start to break him, and that cardio is going to start to come into play, and I think that's where Tuivasa will start to take over. Albeit Tuivasa historically not a great cardio machine himself, but I think if he can go out there and break Greg Hardy, I truly think he's capable of doing that, and he can lean on his durability to eat the shots of Greg Hardy. And again, if Greg Hardy goes out there and just sticks and moves, he's not going to land anything that's going to put Tai Tuivasa out. He's going to have to commit on his strikes and really get it going. And if he doesn't get him out there, then he's fucked. His cardio is going to be gone, and then Tai Tuivasa will be able to find that kill shot probably in that second or third round. So personally, I'm staying away from this in terms of serious money, but the only things I'll be sprinkling is probably Tai Tuivasa in round 2 and Tai Tuivasa in round 3, and I'll be looking to get some exposure on Tuivasa going into round 2, depending on how that first round went. So I'm going to go with Tuivasa second or third round KO. Nick, I'll let you wrap this one up in terms of who you think wins this fight here.
I'm going to side with James and Yanni here in this spot, of course. I mean,
leave me on the island. It's fine. Leave me on the island.
Well, a lot of times the person on the island actually ends up pretty well. So in this case, it might happen. But I get it. Both these guys, I think, have potential to finish each other, to be honest with you. Even though you said Tuivasa is pretty durable, he showed that durability. Hardy, I mean, make no mistake, this dude, he's one of the hardest hitting heavyweights, period. And Tuivasa has been stung in fights before. Let's not make that mistake. So I think Hardy is one of the hardest hitters that Tuivasa has faced. I think if it becomes a firefight, Hardy has that advantage with the length. You guys already touched on a lot of the attributes for Hardy as well. I think right now we're getting Hardy at this price because Tuivasa is coming off back-to-back wins. A lot of people think he's back on track, and he's had some decent performances in the octagon, right? But at the same time, I think Hardy's just a special freak of nature athlete. He's getting better fight by fight for sure. His striking's getting better. Tybura was just a very smart, difficult matchup for him, I think, especially he survived. He weathered that storm in the first round, and then he got the fight to the floor. And what Yanni said off camera, we did talk about this. Look, if you're Tuivasa's camp right now, even though he's not that type of fighter, how could you not tell him to at least
That's
work on his
you're right. You being right's what worries me.
How could you not, like, if you can't get it to the floor, so be it. Go to plan B, strike with him. That's what you do anyway. But at least attempt a takedown, because if you get top position on Greg Hardy with that power and that size, both these guys are big dudes.
Yeah,
You're going to be able to probably do damage and land it, probably win. So at least attempt it. So I wouldn't be shocked if Tuivasa tries to follow that path along the way to try to get a takedown, even though he's only attempted 2. And I think it was all the way back in his first fight, his debut, his whole UFC career. So if he doesn't, I won't be shocked. But game plan wise, his camp has to come through here and at least attempt it, I would think. But outside of that, I don't think he's going to be successful at it. I think Hardy's going to be able to keep this fight upright and land the kill shot eventually too, which is hard to believe. But even if not, even if they start to wear down, I think Hardy could at least steal the first 2 rounds and win 2 out of 3 rounds and get the decision. So I think it's Greg Hardy or pass for me.
Last thing I'll say about this matchup, DC was actually posed this question on their weigh-in show while the weigh-ins were going on, and the question was, does Tai Tuivasa complete at least one takedown in this fight? And, Tuivasa has trained with DC in the past, and DC's like, he's not a good wrestler. Like, he flat out said he's not a good wrestler. Like, if he trips and falls and ends up on top of him, that counts as a takedown, right? That's the only way he's taking him down. So we definitely have that to take into consideration here. All right, let's get it to the main event here. This is the fight that I'm easily most excited about on the card. Very interested to hear everybody's take on this fight. But we got Wonderboy Thompson at the young, spry age of 38 years old going up against Gilbert Durinho Burns. In terms of odds, we got some money on Stephen Thompson here, minus 160-ish. The return on Burns roughly around plus 140. James, give it to us, brother. How do you feel? How do you see this fight going down?
Yeah, I love both these guys. I'm a big fan of both these guys. I've followed both these guys' career for a long time. I think stylistically, Wonderboy is a really tough matchup for Burns. The height difference, the reach difference, and I like Burns a lot. But you can find a lot of guys to look like Burns. You can make a phone call and get 20 guys that look like Burns. There's like 5 people on planet Earth that can do what Stephen Thompson do.
Raymond Daniels, apparently.
And 4 of them
Daniels
are busy.
Daniels is a good look. Daniels is a good look. That is a good look. But Daniels is very kick heavy too. He doesn't use his hands very often. Wonderboy will box you up too, and it's just he's good, man. He's really good. And I think I seen a stat somewhere that he got taken down by Matt Brown in his first fight 5 times, and then since then he's defended like 88% of takedowns.
Yeah,
which. He's shown he can do a really good job of that, but I don't even think it's going to be that case. This is going to be another thing where you see bigger cage. Wonderboy's got more. He's just hard. I'm telling you guys, he's hard to touch out there, let alone take down. You know what I mean? Like, look at what he's doing. Look at what he did against Jeff Neal. I mean, good Lord. He danced around that dude and made it look easy. And he's done that to so many good guys that we're all like, this is going to be the guy. This guy's going to give him some problems. And he just makes it look easy. And I'll be honest with you guys. I think Wonderboy is the best look to beat Usman. I really do. I think he's the toughest matchup for Usman. And I could see him if you told me, hey, the welterweight title goes to somebody else within the next year, my pick would be Wonderboy.
I like it. I'm actually right there with you, dude. I think that Wonderboy and Colby Covington probably have the best shot to beat Kamaru Usman. And obviously, we saw Colby Covington fall short, but that was a very close fight. I would love to see a rematch there. But yeah, I think Wonderboy is my favorite spot on this entire card. He is like the play that I'm most confident about. I feel like he's going to go out there and put a clinic on Gilbert Burns. Let's just quickly run through Gilbert Burns' welterweight history now. He took his initial welterweight fight in the UFC on short notice against Alexei Kunchenko. He gets the victory there, but starts slowing down later in that fight. The Gunnar Nelson fight, similar situation there. The next fight, the Damian Maia fight, stylistically a great fight for him. He was in the jaws of defeat with Damian Maia on his back, able to get out of that position, get back onto the feet, and absolutely starch him. And then Tyron Woodley in 2020. Again, I try to be as respectful as I can to fighters, but we know Tyron Woodley in 2020 is nowhere near what he used to be back in the day. And Gilbert Burns showed great cardio in that fight because, James, you know this, when you have absolute success in your fight and you have almost no resistance, your cardio is going to look amazing because you're dictating where this fight goes. You dictate the pace and everything. And that's exactly what Gilbert Burns was able to do in that fight. And then we saw the Kamaru Usman fight. I feel like the narrative that he hurt Kamaru Usman in that first round is a little bit overblown. I think the commentators were like thinking that he was closer to getting finished than he actually was. He definitely got him off balance, but I think that Kamaru did a great job in terms of getting his wits about him.
Even
heart of
if
a champion.
he did, though, Usman, Wonder Boy ain't Usman on the feet. Man.
That's what I mean. That's what I'm getting to. That's what I'm getting to. So he might, like, if he lands a shot on Wonder Boy here, I don't think it's going to get to the point where it's like, okay, he's going to knock him out or anything like that. I truly think that people are low on Wonder Boy, lower on Wonder Boy than they should be because of that Anthony Pettis knockout. I think that's more of an anomaly than anything. That was a quintessential Wonder Boy Thompson 50-45 just waiting to happen, and that weird Superman punch comes out of nowhere. The only success Anthony Pettis really had in that fight. He had some good leg kicks in there and all that, but again, that was a Wonder Boy fight all around. Gilbert Burns, grappler first, turn striker, thanks to Henry Hooft. Henry Hooft goes out there, gives him a striking game, a Dutch kickboxing style, and it's similar to what Vicente Luque brings to the table too, who just fought Wonder Boy Thompson 2 fights ago and got absolutely lit up. And that's like probably the best we've ever seen Wonder Boy Thompson look at 37 years old, 36 years old, goes out there and drops him numerous times. So he's looked absolutely phenomenal, and even beating Jeff Neal over 5 rounds, like James was talking about. Wonder Boy Thompson has Gilbert Burns covered everywhere. I think his movement is going to be good enough to nullify a takedown attempt from Gilbert Burns. Gilbert Burns is going to be whiffing at air for the majority of this fight, gas himself out, and I'm calling it right here. Wonder Boy Thompson, round 3 KO. I'm going for that plus 1,000 for round 3 on Mr. Wonder Boy Thompson. I'm going to be hitting that, and then obviously plus 300-ish for Wonder Boy by KO. I'm hitting that as well. Nick, I'll hand it on over to you before it gets too hot and heavy over here for me, because I love me some Wonder Boy Thompson.
I think you're right, man. I think that that's probably the way it's going to play out. I think Thompson is going to be too much. What James said, what you said. He is an elite level striker, one of the best strikers historically in the sport ever. I mean, the transition from karate, point fighting, kickboxing over to MMA and having that level of success, not many have seen it. I mean, even you guys were talking about Raymond Daniels earlier. I mean, I know these guys fairly well because my background is sport karate, all that stuff. I mean, those guys are special. And Raymond Daniels doesn't even he wasn't able to even cross over as much and have success like Stephen Thompson, right? And we know how good Raymond Daniels is, one of the best all-time kickboxers and karate fighters and whatnot as well. So I think Stephen Thompson is just an elite special type of talent that has gotten better. At 38 years old, I don't think he's ever been better because he's put everything together, like his mental aspect of things. If you remember early on in his career, he had some cardio issues. That cardio has been addressed, and it's hard to get over that hump, I think, with a lot of these fighters. Because I think a lot of times when we see bad cardio, it kind of sticks with them, even if they try to get over that hump. I mean, historically, they just can't do it. But he has done it. He's improved quite a bit. Burns is dangerous, though. This is my hesitation here. I mean, he has that one-punch knockout power that we've seen time and time again, that he could maybe kind of get lucky. I mean, land it on the feet. Or if he does find Thompson in a position on the ground, he could obviously submit him as well. So he has that danger aspect. As James mentioned earlier with Ryan Hall, that all it takes is one takedown or one back take to end the fight for sure. But I do think it's Thompson's fight to win or lose. He controls the space. He controls the distance. Early on at Circa, we've had some sharp action bet Thompson up. So the heavy bettors, the sharper bettors were max betting Thompson. We raised the price, Now we're seeing action back down, come back down with more public action. Some sharps mixed in as well, but there's a lot more public action at Circa Sports on Gilbert Burns. So I think the way this is playing out, it seems like Thompson is a sharp side. I mean, all of us kind of pretty much agree with that as well. But I think at the price, still minus 150, 160, it's a little bit more difficult to bet on it and lay that chalk because of Burns' success as of late. He seems to be, fighting a little bit better in the welterweight division, obviously getting that title shot. His confidence outside of that last loss to Usman has to be at an all-time high as well. And I know they're going to game plan appropriately and try to get inside, close that distance, and get this fight to the floor if they're able to. So a little dangerous, but I still like Thompson in this fight.
All right, Yanni, let's make this one a unanimous one. How are you feeling about Gilbert Burns and Wonder Boy Thompson?
I actually placed a bet on this fight, but it's on the total on the rounds. I'll get to that. I don't want to rain on the parade, and that's what I'm worried about right here. So you guys got to talk me off that Burns bridge because I haven't bet it. But here's what scares me. And me again, I try not to pay attention to noise, but I use it a little to play contrarian and gauge the pulse of the market. And here's what I hear from not these guys, from being out here in Vegas, and it's that kind of week, that Stephen Thompson is the heir apparent. He will be fighting for the welterweight strap next. It's just a matter of getting past this fight. Like, we're all waiting. He got 2 wins in a row. He's next. And it's been a little while. That worries me, number one. Whenever the heir apparent, more times than not, it just doesn't work out the way we want it to. 38 years old worries me a little. And then he hasn't been profitable in this role. I always say, when in doubt, zoom out. That tells us the truth, the law of big numbers. Because like I say, even losing bettors have hot streaks, just like winning bettors have cold streaks. And with Thompson, yes, he's won 2 straight coin flip fights around a -120 favorite. But when I zoom out, when he's been a favorite over his last 4, he's 2-2. And he's been an average of -175. So you've lost money back in him. Over his last 6, he's 3-3. Over his last 7, 3-3-1. And he's an average favorite of 165. So again, he split out. You lost money back in him as a favorite in this role. That's what worries me, that we already gave him, he's next in line for Usman. Everyone's already declared that. And then though he hasn't at least rewarded bettors all that much throughout. He's been a little overvalued in his career, and Burns continues to be undervalued, where he won 6 of his last 7. But this guy's been only favored in 3 of those fights and never more than 170 average. He was a dog the rest of them. So for me, that was what was worrisome. But again, I listen to the people I respect, and because of they're on the Thompson side, I've left it alone. And I bet the under 2.5 at plus money, because at least the data tells me the path to victories looks like whoever dominates is going to be able to dominate. Like if Thompson wins this fight with his striking, he's probably going to get him out of there with it, tire him out and to get him out of there. If Burns gets him down on the ground, I don't think Thompson's going to survive it. At least it looks like paper. Burns is that elite. So for me, that's why. So I look at it like if either guy dominates this fight, I should cash my ticket, and hopefully one of them is able to impose their will.
I'm getting a little bit of PTSD betting the under 2.5s in fights. The last time around, I bet under 2.5. I had Julia Avila against Yulia Stoliarenko, and we saw Avila get the submission with 50
not
seconds
to hold
left.
you up. Can Burns take Thompson down? Because here's what I see: that over Thompson's last 4 fights, all 4 guys, none of them averaged more than 0.6 takedowns per 15 minutes. So none of them are using wrestling offensively. He hasn't had one UFC opponent that averages more than 2 takedowns per 15 minutes. Burns does average over 2 takedowns, something he hasn't gone up against. Does that matter? Or is his takedown defense as legit as at least the 80% almost appears? Or is it just he hasn't fought guys that had Burns' ability to get the takedown?
I feel like Wonderboy's fought fighters that have better takedowns than what Burns is going to bring to the table here. And not to mention, it's going to be so hard to corral Wonderboy Thompson in that 30-foot cage and just find him up against it. Even when he's backed up against the cage, he does such a good job in terms of misdirections and thinking he's going to go one way and come the other, and then pop you with a couple shots. And then you're just like, oh, I thought I was supposed to be shooting a takedown right now. I don't know if James can back me up on that, but would you agree?
Yeah, I don't think it's a matter of taking him down. I mean, you can't take a shot if you can't, you know what I mean? Like you gotta find the dude before you can even take a shot, and I think he's just so damn hard to find that people aren't attempting takedowns on him, like in order to fight him, you're gonna have to fight him. And I do think Burns is gonna do that. I do think Burns is gonna create a couple car crashes where these guys are gonna lock up and maybe he does get him down or get him to his butt. You know what I mean? I don't know if he'll get him down. I think he has to win this fight though, to be honest with you. But I'm telling you, we're talking about it's hard to touch him, let alone shoot the double leg on him. You know what I mean? Like it's hard to get a hold. You got to find him. That's where it's like he makes people look stupid. They're constantly doing this, and it's hard to find him out there.
It's one thing to improve your striking as Gilbert Burns has and go out there and fight guys like Alexei Kunchenko and Damian Maia and Tyron Woodley, but it's another completely different universe when you're talking about competing against Wonderboy Thompson, trying to track him down. All right, let's get to the main event here, and then we can wrap this thing up. Dustin Poirier, Conor McGregor. In terms of odds, the love has been coming on Poirier over the last couple of days. He's roughly around -130, -125, plus 105 on Conor McGregor. And I'll kick this one off for everybody here. Tough fight to break down. I've had so many people all week saying, oh, Poirier just beat him 6 months ago. This is a no-brainer. You got to bet Dustin Poirier. That's not how MMA works. It doesn't work that way. We know if these guys fight 10 times, there's going to be significant amounts of different outcomes here. Now, if this fight goes deeper into the fight, which I believe it is, I think we're going to see a 3rd, 4th, and possibly a 5th round here. I think it favors the diamond here. I think that Dustin Poirier, as he's shown in past fights, the longer fights go, he just gets stronger. The Dan Hooker fight, he was down a little bit going into that 3rd, 4th, and 5th rounds, and he just puts on a great performance, comes back, shows the heart of a champion. the Justin Gaethje fights, the Eddie Alvarez fights. Those are just great examples of when he is pushed, he rises to the occasion and he can go out there. Now, the big thing here, I've seen so many people say, oh, if you parlayed Conor McGregor at minus 300 back in January and you're not playing him right now at plus 105, plus 110, you're making a mistake. I think the thing that we found out in the last fight, though, has a big indicator on why I believe that, you don't have to bet that number if you don't feel comfortable about it, is that Dustin Poirier's durability has gotten so much better being up at 155 pounds compared to when he was at 145. And he ate some clean shots from Conor McGregor early on in that fight, and he ate them like nothing. He came forward, walked through it, kept his leg kick game going, and then eventually opened up his hands once Conor was kind of immobilized. And the fact that we know that Dustin Poirier could take a shot now, or at least more often than not take a shot from Conor McGregor, leads me to believe that Dustin Poirier should go out there and be able to successfully implement his game. I feel like Conor starts to slow down as the fight goes on. There isn't historical real evidence on that other than when he emptied his gas tank trying to knock out Nate Diaz in that first round and gets choked out in the second round. The Khabib Nurmagomedov fight, but let's, just like whenever anybody fights Valentina Shevchenko, we don't even talk about those fights. I do think that Conor's power will start to slow. I do think it will start to fade, and that's where I think that Dustin Poirier will start to get success, maybe land a couple takedowns. I do think that Poirier has the better grappling game here. Possibilities for submissions. I've seen that prop thrown around a lot over this past week, but I do like Dustin Poirier in this situation. Am I putting money on it? Probably not. But the things that I will probably look to target is if I can find a market that will let me get money down on the under 4.5, under 3.5. That's probably what I'm going to be looking at, or even just parlaying the fight doesn't go to decision on some of these offshore bookies that I got. But I do like Poirier here. I like him late. I will be sprinkling those round 3, 4, and 5 props for Poirier, which is in the plus 1,000, plus 1,200, plus 1,400 range. Got to take a little bit of shot there, but man, this is a lot tougher of a fight to call than people are making it out to be. But I'm ultimately going to be on the Poirier side, taking him by late KO, probably 4th round. Nick, let's throw it on over to you. How do you feel about this monster main event that we got tomorrow night?
Man, I love it, honestly. Anytime Conor McGregor fights, as you know, for all of us, look, this is going to be a mega show. Not, anytime you're talking about Conor McGregor, period, any show that we're on gets elevated to another level, right? There's going to be more views, more buzz around it in general, right? For the media, for the fighters, for the UFC, for everything. So super pumped. I wish Conor McGregor honestly fought once a month if he could. If he'd be on every pay-per-view, that'd be fantastic. Just for, just everything, the look and feel. And, like I said, it kind of wins when Conor McGregor fights. But that being said, the breakdown, I think he can make those adjustments. I like what you said. I think if it does go in round 3, 4, 5, the value might be on Poirier. And I totally can see, making bets in those rounds, because I think it will favor Poirier as the fight goes on. If he's able to survive the first couple rounds, then, things could shift into his favor. But I do think this, though. A lot of people are thinking that if he hits the scorecards, that it's going to be an easy fight for Dustin Poirier. He's going to outpoint him. I think it's going to be very, very competitive. If it goes all 5 rounds and it hits the scorecards, which I don't think it will. I think there is too much firepower in this spot. I think it could go over 1.5 rounds. But then I think after that, it gets a little bit sketchy for sure. I think the fight will probably finish. But that being said, I lean towards Conor McGregor. I think he can honestly make the adjustments that he needs in this spot. He is an elite level striker, which I don't think enough people realize how good he is with his striking, right? He normally controls the distance very well. Yeah. He's got good accuracy, underrated power, even at 155 pounds. I know he's not getting people out of there as often as he was at 145, but he's still a special elite level striker. And the last fight, those leg kicks were an issue. Credit Dustin. He even said, I think on one of the UFC preview shows, it might even have been embedded that wasn't his game plan. His game plan was not to go out there and leg kick Conor McGregor and win. It was effective. He knew that once, Conor started feeling it or whatnot, he went back to it and it won him the fight. A lot of people think Conor McGregor was tired in that fight. He was slowing down. I think it was more leg kicks than anything else that got that fight, the W for Poirier. But Poirier has been very impressive. If you look at who he's beat at lightweight, man, that's just the best of the best. So I have a ton of respect for him. I wouldn't be shocked if he gets it done. I just think the price is screaming at me right now more than anything else. If you're getting Conor McGregor at plus money, he should be a slight favorite still, in my opinion, coming into this fight. So if you're getting him at plus money, even money, if you can even lay minus 120, I think it's worth a bet on Conor, not on Poirier. So I'm going to go against the grain. Everybody at Circa has been coming in on Poirier like crazy from the beginning, and I knew that it was going to be that way. But I kept us on Conor McGregor a little bit to get that early action on Dustin Poirier because the Conor McGregor money's coming. And I'm starting to see it. As we're on this show right now, I'm getting reports back and messages. And we are starting to see some Conor McGregor money come back in. So it's pretty cool. I was expecting it. I think the line will close back towards a pick'em, to be honest with you. Maybe Poirier closes a slight favorite right now. I think he's like minus 135 at circa, a little bit lower, higher in other places as well. So it's around that part. I think that this fight is going to be just a heavy bet fight across the board, and it's just going to be an awesome, like I said, spectacle. And I think Conor's going to bounce back, get it done, redeem himself. I'm glad that he's coming into this fight on shorter time without taking a year off or whatnot. I mean, in 5-6 months, he's getting right back on the horse. I think the activity uptick is good to see from Conor McGregor as well, and I think he's going to probably make those adjustments and get it done. I hope he does at least, because we're more than likely going to need Conor McGregor to win this fight.
Yanni is absolutely salivating at the mouth to talk about this fight. I can see it in his eyes. Drop it on us, Yanni. How do you feel about this main event?
I am, because this fight is a perfect dissertation for sports betting. It sets up so many great examples, and so much could be learned from it regardless of the outcome. That's the key in this fight. Here's what I mean. First, let's talk what's happened. We have the over monies come in. Total opened 1.5 because books thought bettors remember what they saw last, and it's since been steamed up. So here's some actionable information. The over 1.5 was minus 145. Now it's minus 200. I think that value's gone. It's been extracted, obviously. It's moved too much. If you still agree with that over, I think you should look to go over maybe even 2.5 at plus money, because the one weight class where once they get out of the first round, the likelihood that it gets at least to the third is so much greater at lightweight. Like in most weight classes, if they don't finish in the first round, by the time they get to the third, the probability is cut in half. In lightweight, it's cut over a third. So if they get out of the first, very few times does that fight even get finished. So there's some live betting info for you. As far as this fight goes, this is as simple as it gets. And here's why. Very difficult to predict. As hard as it gets to predict this fight. Because, listen, Dustin, look at him. Pressure, pace, his striking, his grappling. We could talk about all that. Conor, the specialist, what he's done, the data, the analytics, all that. That's all great in trying to predict the outcome, which is almost impossible to do. That's not what I'm here for. I'm here to find good bets. Conor McGregor on Saturday night is a great bet, win or lose. And here's the problem. If I'm betting my opinion, I'm betting Dustin Poirier. So here's the issue that I have to live with. That I know with 100% certainty, without a doubt right now, we know that Conor's the value side. You can't even make an argument, because if you're making an argument for Dustin right now, you already made your money on Dustin because you bet him last time at plus 200. What are you betting him now? Why would you lay -1, whatever? You liked him last time. What you're going to like him now because of what you saw last time? That to me makes no sense. That's what a squares bettor is supposed to do. You're not supposed to have a knee-jerk reaction. That's what books want you to do. So for me, I got to look at the betting line. Forget everything else. The X's and O's to me, let James break that down, and Nick. They know him much better than me. For me, it's as simple as this. They fought the first time. Conor opens -260. We all bet him up to almost opens -165. We all bet him up to almost -275. He goes in, he wins, does what he's supposed to. The second time, just 5 months ago, he opens -175. All of us, the betting market, bet him up to -300. We all agreed that night that he should win that fight 3 out of 4 times. Every one of us agreed. It closed -300. Again, some people bet Dustin. God bless you. You made a good bet. You cashed a good ticket. So what I'm saying is the market already determined that. And we already know historically, there's no even argument. That argument's been settled. The most accurate reflection of true win probability is the closing line, because the most info is factored into it. That's why books will take the most money, the latest, because all the info is factored into it. Why will a sportsbook take 100,000 bet on the NFL on Sunday afternoon, but not 5 days prior? Because on Sunday afternoon, they know who's hurt. They know what the weather is. That uncertainty is no longer there. So all that is factored into the price. So now if you think because it's raining, you're going to use that info to beat them, they're laughing at you. They already factored that rain into the price. That's why they're willing to let you bet more on Sunday than 5 days ago when they didn't know it was going to rain. So what I'm telling you is we already concluded that Conor's a minus 300 just 5 months ago. And that means he should win 75% of the time. Dustin is a minus 130, 140 favorite. So now we, the market, are saying Conor can't even win this half the time? When 5 months ago we were convinced he could win 75%, and now he can't even do it 50%? Like what? Did he lose an arm? Did he lose a leg? Like, oh, he has less than a half of a chance than last time? That to me, just, you can't argue that. Like, unless the guy just, I don't even know how you could even make that argument that there's value on Dustin at minus 140, 130, when just 5 months ago, you could have got him at plus 200. A couple years ago. If you didn't, then you missed the boat. Let it go. Find another bet that has value. There's nothing wrong. You don't have to place there. You don't have to bet every fight. Bet the ones that give you value. Like I said, I don't try to make sense out of every fight. I bet fights that make sense. To me, this makes sense. I'll look like a fool because Dustin's probably going to go in there and beat him because that's what my bias says. In fact, I even wrote a note to self, follow the charts, because I have my own biases I have to fight every single day. I think Dustin should beat him. Conor's a billionaire. Why should he give a shit about training as hard as Dustin's been? At 155, Dustin looks so much more durable. All that stuff you said's right, but the price isn't. Because 5 months ago, I could have got this guy at 2-1. I should have made my money on him. That train's left the station, brother. You can't bring it back. So let it go. You bet the underdog because you know you're getting a better price today than 5 months ago, or you enjoy the fight like a fan. So for me as a bettor, it's pretty easy. To predict it, it's almost impossible. I'll let that up to these guys. They're better at it than me. But for me, like I said, from a bettor perspective, it don't get easier than betting these kind of fights.
So you're on Conor is pretty much what you're trying to say. Yeah,
Conor or pass, right? Conor or pass.
Yeah. I completely understand that approach here. James, I'm going to tee this up to you with two questions here. One, who are you picking in that first fight, and has that changed now what you've seen back in January? And two, in terms of that calf kicking style that Dustin brought into that first fight, I saw a couple clips out there where he's like, I just threw it out there to throw it out there, and I thought it was effective, and I took advantage of it. How can Conor actually make an adjustment to be prepared for that if Dustin decides to do that again? Stylistically speaking, how do you prepare for something like that?
I think he's just got to go back to his old stance and kick a little bit more. He's go back to that bladed, that karate stance almost. You know, I think that's where he had a lot of success early, and I think he used the kicks to establish range, and then that would run people into his big power. To whereas I personally think he's been trying to do the big boxing matches with Mayweather and Pacquiao, where he's a lot more lead leg heavy in the fight with the second fight with Dustin. And I think that's what happens. He's just been working his boxing a lot, and you can't have that karate style in boxing. It just doesn't work. So and
who'd you have in the first fight, and has it changed?
In the first fight, man.
Oh, sorry, second fight.
Yeah. I'm sorry. In the second fight, I want to say I picked Dustin, but I don't remember, man. Because I'm the same way on that one. I'm on this one too. And everything for people listening at home, everything that Yanni just said is spot on. I don't pick fights off that. I pick fights off who I think is going to win.
Exactly. And nothing wrong with that. And you've had success with it. You shouldn't change it. That's why, like, if guys are winning, if they found an edge and that edge is enough to overcome the hold, God, keep doing it. Don't do it the way I'm doing it. I found my edge, and that's why. But that's why I said James will save me money. He'll get me off a fight because he already proved to me that he is able to see something and quantify it. So keep doing what you're doing, bro. Don't change a thing.
Yeah, and just how you said that, this is also why I text you every weekend and say, hey, who do you have? You know what I mean? Because I want to know, like, on the analytical side, I'm not smart enough to look at the numbers like you are. I just know fighting. You guys know betting. You know, so you're right. Conor is the bet to make. Take that, move it to the side. I agree with that 100%. In my opinion, it's Dustin's
He's not winning the fight, right?
I don't think so. It's Dustin's fight to win, but I did not put my full amount on. I put half of what I typically would on it. And I think Dustin's going to win. And to me, this is a coin flip fight. I don't know who's the better fighter here. So what I do is I look at the over under. For me, Conor has to win this fight inside of 1.5, maybe 2 rounds, in my opinion. If it goes past that, I think it's Dustin's fight. I know Nick said that if he goes to the decision, it's a close fight. I on our other show, I completely disagree with him. I see the point there. I don't think this fight goes to the cards any which way but loose. Dustin lives in 3, 4, and 5, and if it hits 3, 4, and 5, I see Dustin finishing him. All that being said, if Conor has 5 minutes to get him out of there, and this fight's 25 minutes, I gotta kind of lean towards Dustin if the fight goes to the cards, because there's 20 minutes of fight that I think Dustin's gonna win compared to 5 minutes of fight where I think Conor can win. So I think Conor's got to get him out of there. I'm saying 1.5 conservatively. 2, I think, might even be a little stretch. So even if at 2 rounds, I feel like I got to lean a little bit at Dustin because Dustin's got more time to win, and he's going to pour it on. He's done that historically. He did it against Tavares. He did it against Gaethje. Did it against Hooker. And those are fights where he's seen some trouble early and then later transferred over. Now, let's talk about Conor. Conor at 155, he doesn't have the comatose power that he did at 45. He just doesn't. And he's got power.
You don't.
But he's hurting people. He's not sending them into the shadow realm. You know what I mean? Like he was at 40. He's flooring people at 45. These guys at 55, they're big dudes, man. They're not small. They can take a good shot. And the only time Poirier has been knocked out at lightweight was his very first fight at lightweight against Michael Johnson. I don't think he had the time to transfer. It's a process to move weight classes and not just move weight classes. It's not about weight. It's about your body easing into that weight, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Just because you change weight classes doesn't mean your body changes. It takes time to progress into that weight class. And I don't think Poirier had time to that. But since then, he took Conor's best punch. And he took he took some clean punches from Conor in that last fight. You can't tell me that he didn't get wobbled. He took him clean and kept stepping forward. And then the low kick started adding up. Not before. Conor was putting punches on him before that. So for me, that tells me if Dustin can take his best shot and in round 1, clean punches, clean counter punches that Conor normally gets people out of there with, if he could take that shot, that tells me it's going to go late into the fight. If it goes late into the fight, I got to go Dustin Poirier here.
I love it. Seems like for the most part, everybody's on Dustin here. All right, that's pretty much a wrap on the show. One last segment that I'd like to do at the end here is pretty much give everybody's lock of the night play or their most confident play on the card. And I'll throw it around the horn right now, starting off with Nick. Which play do you feel most confident about for tomorrow's UFC 264 card?
I touched on it a little bit earlier. I'm going to stick with Kunitskaya over Aldana. I just think that, again, stylistically, she matches up pretty well. James is going to be against me here. I know that, which sucks. I always want, I hate going against anybody that I respect, but at the same time, I just got to stick to my guns, and I think Kunitskaya can get this fight done. I think she can win by decision on the scorecards, and at dog price, you got to go with it.
Yanni, who do you got here, brother? What's your most confident spot?
I wouldn't say the most confident only because of the randomness involved at heavyweight, but I can't overlook the Hardy at an underdog price, man. Tuivasa, again, we said the X's and O's and all the other reasoning, but just even as a favorite, he just doesn't come through. The 2 or 3 fights that he lost, he was the favorite. He's a guy that just, again, to get that far, obviously you've made some commitments, but he doesn't seem to be shy about telling you he isn't all that committed. He's going in there to knock someone's head off. There isn't all that much game planning to it. And Hardy, at least I know I'm backing the guy who's the better athlete, who is going to give me that size advantage, who I know is at least dedicated to his job, and game planning the sport, the camp he comes from. So, there's a lot to at least getting plus money. How could I pass that up as a best bet? Let's go Greg Hardy. And getting over 3-1, I saw at one spot for inside the distance, only because, I get Tuivasa does have that chin, but I think that was a little bit too high, only because 3 or 4 times judges don't get involved. And in Hardy's 7 wins, I think only one of them did he not get a finish. So I would maybe, if you agree with me at the Hardy side, maybe sprinkle a little of that plus 300 money line inside the distance. But again, I know there's a lot of Tuivasa love out there. He's one of those fun guys you cheer for. So I get it.
James, are you sticking with Aldana even after that weight botch, or does anything else catch your eye?
No, I'm gonna stick with it. I'm gonna stick with it. I just think stylistically she's a tough match for Kunitskaya. I think she's gonna use her volume, range, footwork to stay away from the clinch. I'm sure there'll be some moments where Kunitskaya puts her on the fence. Aldana is I think she's fixed those issues. I don't think she's gonna fade. She's never gotten tired in fight before. Like, she's not known for fading. Takedown problems for sure. The only one you can relate that to is Holly Holm. Yana is not Holly Holm in any way, shape, or form. I think Aldana is going to put a punch on her, and I see her winning, pretty convincingly. I'm going to stick with Aldana.
Even though my money's on Kunitskaya this weekend, I'm going to be thinking about both of you guys. Like, fuck, I hope I get the better of this one. But in terms of my most favorite player on my lock that I play, I'm going to be going with Wonderboy Thompson. I think he schools Gilbert Burns this weekend. As long as he can deal with the potential takedown opportunities of Burns, I love Wonderboy Thompson in this spot. I think he's going to put on a clinic and possibly get that third round KO. You know, I'm going to be sprinkling that third round plus 1,000 spot because I do have a good amount of confidence, as well as that plus 300 KO. All right, I'll swing around the horn one more time in case any of you guys want to have anything to plug or anything to say on the back end here, and then I'll wrap up the show. Nick, let's start off with you, brother.
Check me out at Twitter at Fight Odds. And then, of course, if you're in Las Vegas, if you're in Colorado and soon to be Iowa, check out circasports.com. Download the Circa Sports app anywhere, anytime to check out our UFC odds.
Perfect. Yanni, what do you got to share with the audience?
No, thanks for having me on, man. You know, I learned something every time I listen to either of these guys, yourself included. And hopefully you guys saved me some money and made me some money tonight. And like I always say, whether you follow or fade, I just hope you make some money. I'm not your bookmaker. You ain't taking it out of my pocket. I like seeing bettors win, man, whether they follow or fade me. So thanks for having me on, and best of luck to all this weekend.
Absolutely. James, anything you want to drop on the back end here, brother?
Nah, man, thank you for having me on. It's always a blast. I learned something too, man. Like, it's cool listening to these because it's such a it's a melting pot of perspectives on this. So anytime, I can't imagine somebody at home watching this and just not having, at least a clear-cut answer, whether they're my view, Nick's view, your view, Yanni's view. I can't imagine somebody watching this and not feeling really good about what they're about to do next. You know what I mean? Like, there's so much information coming from multiple angles here. Man, this has been I've learned stuff even watching the last 2 hours. I can't imagine somebody else not learning something from this.
If the chat is any indication, everybody loved this episode. It was an absolute honor to have all of you guys on, having the coaching perspective, fighter perspective, the bookmakers perspective, the analytics perspective. Everybody loved it. So I'm hoping that we can get this cast together for one of these big pay-per-views down the road for sure. Appreciate all three of you guys carving out time on this Friday evening before the biggest card of the year. So I really appreciate that first and foremost. And then shout out to the almost 600 people that we got watching live here, as well as the thousands that are going to be watching on the back end here. I will be doing a Fight Day live chat 1 p.m. Eastern tomorrow. If you guys want to throw out any questions, that show is just for the fans. If you guys have any questions, comments, or suggestions, hit me up and I'll be happy to answer it for you guys there. And that's about it. Good luck on your bets this weekend, fellas, and let's make some moolah. Good luck, everyone.